Chapter 8:35. Within the formation, Wang Chong slowly withdrew his energy and his hands as he gave a long sigh. As the last bit of Brigadier General Saint Martial energy flowed into his body, Wang Chong felt the stellar energy in his body roil like a river. His cultivation rose from Saint Martial Tier 1 to Saint Martial Tier 2, and then it soared until it finally stopped at Saint Martial Tier 3. This shouldn't be the case. Just what sort of evil art is this? A weak voice, as thin as a mosquito's buzz, came from up ahead, tinged with the scent of death. Agudulan's body was thin and his hair was sparse, making him look like a mummy. Only a layer of skin remained on his body, giving him a terrifying appearance. But in this state, Agudulan was still alive, his eyes still fixed on Wang Chong. The great yin-yang heaven creation art, the #1 evil art of the Central Plains. Wang Chong smiled as he stood up, fulfilling Agudulan's dying wish. Evil art, so that's how it is. Agudulan's eyes were dazed, and then the light in his eyes was extinguished like a candle in the wind. Bang! His body slumped to the ground. Congratulations to user for killing Agudulan and removing another major threat to Chishi. In addition, the Black Wolf Yabgu has died in battle, causing a major event that has changed the course of the Western Turkic Khaganate's history. User is rewarded with 2,000 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. User has successfully saved the mission, the warhorses of the Tang dynasty, and avoided the penalty for failure. At this moment, the Stone of Destiny's voice sounded in Wang Chong's mind. A smile appeared on Wang Chong's face. Killing Agudulan had given him 2,000 points of destiny energy, and when added to the rewards from before, Wang Chong now had 4,670 points of destiny energy. This way, I can go to the Stone of Destiny to exchange for another batch. Wang Chong thought to himself. Along the way, Wang Chong had gradually discovered that in order to obtain a large amount of destiny energy, the best way was to kill some of the extremely powerful and important figures on the other side. These characters were often related to the fate of the other empires, and from there, they would receive huge rewards for changing history. I'll store these destiny energy points for now. When I need them in the future, I'll use them to exchange for some very important abilities. Wang Chong thought. After his battle with Dian Mengpoj at the Triangular Gap, Wang Chong had spent a large amount of destiny energy to purchase the karmic battle armor, and he was gradually beginning to taste the sweetness of the Stone of Destiny's rewards. The Stone of Destiny actually had some extremely powerful treasures that played a decisive role in battles between top-notch experts. However, these treasures often cost a lot of points to exchange, but everything was worth it. The more energy points spent, the more powerful the treasure. Elder Fong, Elder Du. Wang Chong turned his head and glanced at the two chief of Wushang. The two understood and began to form seals with their hands, unleashing waves of stellar energy. Rumble. The earth trembled as the dust around the Chishi armory began to disperse. The ground was strewn with corpses and rivers of blood. Not even the darkness of night could conceal the thick stench of blood in the air. Marquis, the battle is over. All the Turks have been annihilated. Only 400 to 500 managed to escape. We've also captured a few captives. May I ask what we should do next? Wang Chong had barely crossed the edge of the formation when a scout captain walked over, his body reeking of blood and spear in hand. Forget about those who escaped. There's no need to pursue them. As for the captives, bring them all back. In addition, inform everyone to withdraw. Wang Chong indifferently said. He was still extremely satisfied with the results of this battle. Although the ground in front of the Chishi armory was littered with corpses, the vast majority of them were Turks and the corpses of the giant wolves. The Wushang cavalry had suffered very few casualties, the majority of them only suffering light injuries. Marquis. The clopping of hooves could be heard as Su Kri rode over on a warhorse. The people of the Chishi Protectorate have heard the commotion and are rushing over. Should we go meet with them and hand over our duties? Wang Chong followed Su Kri's gaze and saw a faint glow of fire in the distance. The fire was moving toward them, accompanied by the clopping of hooves. After so long, the Chishi Protectorate had finally responded. Some people had come to investigate, but from the sound of hooves, not many people had come. Forget it. Now's not the time to meet. Inform everyone to quickly leave. As for the armory, there's no need to worry about it for now. Let them handle it. Yes, Marquis. Before the people of the Qixi Protectorate could arrive, Wang Chong and his 5,000 Wushang cavalry had already left. Not long after they left, a fierce-looking general of the Qixi Protectorate arrived, accompanied by more than 2,000 soldiers, torches in hand. The sight of the hellish scene in front of the Qixi armory caused everyone to grimace. Some of them had long ago turned pale and seemed on the verge of vomiting. Too formidable. Look at the insignia on their bodies. Each of them has the image of a wolf's head. This is the insignia of the Turkic warriors. These are all true warriors. If I remember correctly, these people should be the elites of the army, and only the legendary Black Wolf Yabgu can mobilize them. These fellows love ambushes, and the last time they were mobilized, more than 1,000 people died in the estate, including quite a few of the generals skilled in battle. I didn't think that they would die here. It's too tragic. Look at their wounds, and there's no second wound. Too powerful. Just who did this? This sort of fighting power is simply terrifying. Fortunately, they came to help us. If they were with the Turks, we would have been dead long ago. The sight of the Turks dying so wretchedly made everyone's hearts palpitate in fear. The blood flowing from these people was warm, and it seemed like they had all been slaughtered in a very short amount of time. This sort of fighting power was enough to make one's scalp go numb. Before this, none of them had dared to imagine that Qixi would have such a powerful army. Did you get a good look? In a place that no one was paying attention to, the fierce-faced general of the Qixi Protectorate said in a low voice, a rather unsightly expression on his face. I didn't get a good look, but it's very similar to those people from the Wushang City of Steel. In Qixi only they have this sort of strength. After a few moments of thought, he raised his head and probed, "Milord, they shouldn't be far away." "Sir, they shouldn't be too far away. Should we chase after them?" "There's no need." After a few moments of thought, the Hu general quickly shook his head. In Qixi, that person is a taboo. No one dares to recklessly approach him. It's best if we don't touch this misfortune. Let's quickly clean up this place. "Yes, milord." After traveling several hundred li, Wang Chong finally reached Wushang City of Steel. It was already the Zhou period, and the world was dark and devoid of light. The City of Steel was also deathly still, everyone in a deep slumber. However, Steel Gate's gates were currently open. A charming figure dressed in snow-white clothes rode a large white horse, a smile on the corners of her lips, a sweet smile on her face, as if she was a fairy that descended into the world of mortals, silently waiting at the city gates. How was it? My plan wasn't bad, right? Seeing Wang Chong leading the way back, Su Yiqin's eyes flashed, and she immediately rode forward to greet him, her head slightly raised as she proudly spoke. "Oh, of course. Don't you know who came up with this plan?" Wang Chong couldn't help but laugh as he saw Su Yiqin's coquettish appearance. The two of them had a tacit understanding that the other was referring to the letter that had tricked the Gudulan and the Yabgu. The letter truly was fake, but the contents were true. Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei, had truly been released from the imperial prison, and the berserker syndrome in his body had exploded on the street, causing him to crash into the carriage of a princess. However, Wang Bei had not killed the princess, nor had he caused a massive massacre. On the contrary, just as he was about to lose his mind, Wang Bei had suddenly controlled himself. This had never happened before. After this matter, Wang Bei had written him a letter, telling him that he would soon arrive in Wushang and help him conquer the western regions. This was definitely the best news Wang Chong had heard in a while. This letter had already reached Wang Chong's hands a few days ago, but it was later seen by Su Yiqin. She used it to confuse Agudulan, causing him to lower his guard and send out his troops in advance. Agudulan was truly cautious. Even though he had followed Wang Chong and discovered that he had left Qixi and Sanpas, he had still sent a letter to investigate Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei. Alas, as the devil grew a foot, the Tao grew a zhang. No matter how formidable Agudulan was, He had still lost to Wang Chong and Su Qichin. In the end, he had died in Qixi Armory, all his cultivation going to Wang Chong. But don't be careless about this matter. Don't let it be like the triangular gap last time, where your credit was stolen. Make some preparations and write a memorial to the imperial court. We should at least get some credit. Su Qichin said. You know that I don't really care about these things, but what you say is reasonable. I'll leave the memorial to you. Wang Chong smiled and waved his hand behind him. The group quickly passed through the gate and entered the city of steel. Flap flap. A few moments later, a messenger pigeon soared into the night sky, quickly vanishing in the direction of the capital. The night passed, and in the morning, Wang Chong had just finished a bowl of bird's nest porridge when the door to his room suddenly opened and a figure barged in. "Marquis, something's happened." Su Kui shouted the moment he entered the room. "What's wrong?" Chapter 8:36. Incredible! Marquis, do you remember the group of captives we captured yesterday? Su Kui excitedly said, his face red. "I do. Did something happen?" Wang Chong asked in confusion. After yesterday's battle, he remembered that someone had reported to him that they had captured a group of captives, but Wang Chong didn't understand what was so special about this matter. "Marquis, we really did catch a big fish this time. One of those captives was a prince of the Western Turkic Khaganate, and it was Ishbara Khagan's most beloved fourth prince, the son of the Khaganate's Khatan. Agudu Lan had originally planned on bringing him here to earn merits so that Ishbara Khagan could properly confer him an official title. I didn't expect for him to be captured by us." Su Kui hurriedly said, his voice ragged. "Ah!" Alarmed, Wang Chong abruptly stood up from his seat. In the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, the status of princes was even higher than in the Central Plains. The reason was very simple. The two Turkic Khaganates did not have the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, so the Turkic Khaganate did not have many princes and princesses. A prince born to a Turkic Khatan, and one favored by Ishbara Khagan at that, would have an unimaginable status in the Western Turkic Khaganate. Wang Chong had not expected that in dealing with Agudu Lan, he would end up capturing a prince of the Western Turkic Khaganate. "Marquis, in the morning, we took out all the captives from last night and prepared to interrogate them to see if we could dig up anything useful to the Western Turks. But at this time, we noticed that there was one person who didn't seem right. His attire is very luxurious, and he doesn't look like an ordinary soldier. His temperament is also different, and he seems to have a very high status. No matter how you look at it, he doesn't look like someone who would appear in the army. He doesn't fit in with a group of prisoners." Although it had been Su Kui who had informed Wang Chong, it had been Chen Bin who had discovered the Turkic prince. In the City of Steel's underground prison, Li Sai, Huang Batin, Cheng Sanyuan, Su Shixian, Elder Fong, and Elder Du were all gathered together, listening to Chen Bin's explanation. "At the time, I also felt that there was something wrong with him, so I found someone who could speak Turkic, but I didn't expect him to be a Turkic prince. I didn't dare to confirm it, so after some thought, I called Hulayeg over. He had connections with the Turks, so he should be familiar with all the members of the Turkic imperial clan. When Hulayeg came, he immediately recognized him as the Turkic fourth prince." "Yes." Wang Chong nodded as he peered through a small metal window more than 6 feet off the ground. The Turkic fourth prince was a young man of 21 or 22. Although his clothes were filthy from last night's battle, if one looked carefully, one could still see that they were dressed in an extremely ornate Turkic robe. He truly is a member of the Turkic imperial clan. As Wang Chong looked at the blazing suns on the Turkic youth's clothes and the image of a lone wolf howling at the sun, a thought flashed through his mind. Although Wang Chong had interacted very little with the Turkic imperial clan, he knew that the sacred mountain of the Turks was Mount Sunday. Besides the wolves, they also worshipped the blazing suns in the sky. This was a symbol that only the imperial clan of the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates could use, signifying a noble bloodline. Boom! Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong opened the door and walked in. "No, don't kill me. I'm a prince of the Turks. I can give you a lot of money. Don't kill me." The young Turkic prince seemed to be given a huge fright, his hands and feet curling up into a ball as his body trembled. If one looked carefully, one would realize that this Turkic prince was none other than the young Turkic man who had accompanied the Black Wolf Yabgu Agudulan. Wang Chong slightly frowned at the Turkic prince's frightened expression, not even daring to raise his head. Marquis, this fellow seems like a soft-footed shrimp. Last night's slaughter probably scared him. Su Kui leaned over and whispered into Wang Chong's ear. Wang Chong fell silent for a few moments, and then he nodded. In last night's battle, the Wushang cavalry had dealt with these Turkic elites as easily as cutting through melons and vegetables. Although the Turks were innately brave and fierce in battle, this Turkic prince had grown up on Mount Sanmi, in the Khagan's court. He had only seen a handful of true battles, and even if he had, it had always been in the rear, when the Turks had the upper hand. This was probably the first time in his life that 4,000 to 5,000 Turkic warriors had been slaughtered like sheep. Starting from now, this would become a nightmare for him for a very long time to come. Just now, you said that you could give me a lot of money? Wang Chong squatted down and suddenly asked. Right. No matter how much you want, I'll give it to you. Pearls, agate, gold. My royal father and mother will definitely agree. The young Turkic prince was at first dazed, but he quickly reacted and anxiously said. He had realized that this young Han leader was not speaking the Han language, but the Turkic language that he was most familiar with. Haha, I don't need pearls or agate. As for gold, how much can you Turks have? Will your royal father and mother be willing to give it to you? Wang Chong chuckled. The young Turkic prince was dumbfounded. The Turks were different from the people of the other empires. Their commerce was not as developed, and they did not have as many resources. This meant that even if the Turks had a great deal of wealth, they would find it very difficult to buy as many things as they could in the Central Plains. In other words, the wealth of the Turks would only be of value when trading with the other empires. Thus, the Turks were not very interested in amassing wealth. People like Hulayeg were very rare in both the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates. In addition, the Turkic steppe did not produce gold. Even if one gathered all the gold from both Turkic Khaganates, there wouldn't be much left. From this perspective, it was truly difficult to say just how much gold Ishbara Khagan was willing to pay for a single prince. After all, the gold of the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates was used to buy luxurious objects for the enjoyment of the nobles and imperial household. Wang Chong laughed as he saw the dazed expression on the Turkic prince's face. The Turkic prince was terrified by this laughter, and his entire body began to tremble. Wait a moment. I know you need warhorses. I can give you a large number of warhorses. Our western Turkic Khaganate has the best warhorses on the steppe. I can give you as many as you want. The Turkic prince suddenly shouted. But this time, Wang Chong pretended not to hear. Shaking his head and smiling, he turned around and left the prison under the terrified gaze of the prince. Behind him, the prison door slammed shut. The Turkic prince seemed like he had been struck by lightning, his face pale as he slumped to the ground. Hey, my lord, why didn't you agree to his request just now? The fourth prince has a very high status in the western Turkic Khaganate. Although the western Turkic Khaganate doesn't have much gold, Ishbara Khagan would definitely agree if he wanted warhorses. According to the rules of the steppe, if a noble is captured, they will definitely pay a large sum of money to ransom them. And he's a prince. Just as Wang Chong walked out of the prison, a slightly plump figure suddenly appeared around the corner. This figure was like a cat and was rushing toward him, as if trying to hide from something. I know. Wang Chong indifferently said, not even glancing at Hulayeg. You know? Hulayeg's face froze in shock. Based on his understanding of Wang Chong, he was in dire need of warhorses. Moreover, Wang Chong had most likely agreed to help him because of those 300,000 warhorses. But he hadn't expected that Wang Chong would give up such an excellent opportunity. This left him extremely confused. What? Because I've already thought it over. I'll leave this matter to you. Under Hulayeg's dumbfounded gaze, Wang Chong patted him on the shoulder and quickly left. Hulayeg was left standing, his lips trembling as if he wanted to say something, but his mind was blank and he hesitated. After some time, Hulayeg seemed to understand something, and his eyes shone with delight. With a shout, he jumped up and down in excitement. Wonderful. Putting aside the activity on Wang Chong's end, from the northeastern part of Chishi, across the vast and overgrown Turkic steppe, several thousand li to the extreme north of Chishi, there was a massive and majestic mountain range that seemed like some prehistoric beast. Anyone who saw it would sigh in admiration and feel insignificant. Mount Sanmi. If one looked carefully at the Western Turkic Khagan's court of Khagan, one would realize that this majestic mountain range was actually composed of 3 mountains, 2 low and 1 high. The highest peak was where the current Great Khan of the Western Turks, Ishbara Khagan, resided. The Turkic steppe had always been a vast expanse of flat land, never a place with many mountains or rivers. From Chishi to the north, there wasn't even a single protruding hill in the Western Turkic steppe, much less a large mountain. Thus, one could imagine the significance that Mount Sanmi represented to all the Turks when it appeared on the steppe like a massive beast. Every year, the Turkic Khagans would go to various places to inspect the various tribes, so the ivory tent representing the Khagan was always moving around. But of the Western Turkic Khagans, there was only one place that was recognized: Mount Sanmi. What? A good Ulan was killed and the 4th prince was captured? A Chishi without Fomenlinta actually managed to defeat you and even capture the 4th prince. Chapter 837. Reporting to Khagan. Although Fomenlinta is not present, there is an extremely formidable Tang people youth in Wushang's city of steel called Wang Chong. He pretended to leave Chishi to lure the black wolf Yabgu into a trap. He was the one who ambushed us, killed Yabgu and captured the 4th prince. A Turkic warrior who had luckily escaped from the Chishi armory kneeled on the ground, his face as white as paper and sweat pouring down his face as he stared at the furious Ishbara Khagan. They had immediately returned to this place after escaping from Chishi. A Yabgu had been killed and the 4th prince had been captured. This was no small matter, and it was not something they could bear the responsibility for. City of Steel? Upon hearing this name, the tall and burly Turkic man in the golden tent, his eyes widened and his anger subsided. You're a demon god. You're a demon god. You're a demon god, and you're a demon god. Isn't that the youth of the Tang dynasty who defeated the Karluks and Daluan Ruozan in the War of the Southwest? I had the Black Wolf Yabgu kill him, but he still hasn't finished his task? Lord Yabgu did want to act, but when he realized that the Uzun had acted before him, his lordship wanted to borrow the hands of the Uzun to kill him, so he gave up on the idea. But he didn't expect that the Uzun Empire's Dayan Mangpoj would die at the hands of Wang Chong at the Battle of the Triangular Gap. Thus, his lordship delayed until he was ambushed by that Wang Chong and killed in Chishi. The Turkic warrior who had returned to report the news kneeled on the ground and whispered. What? Such a thing happened. Ishbara Khagan's pupils constricted, and he finally calmed down. In the western regions, the Western Turks had 2 enemies. One was the Tang dynasty, but they had always been on the defensive. Moreover, their supply lines were long and their mobility poor, so they posed little threat. The real enemy was the Uzun people on the opposite plateau. Even though they were separated by the Tang dynasty's Chishi, the Western Turks and the Uzun had fought several times over the leadership of the western regions. The Turks actually had a better understanding of the generals on the Uzun plateau. Ishbara Khagan had some understanding of Dayan Mangpoj. He had once led Uzun's forces around Chishi and launched sneak attacks on the Turkic steppe, inflicting heavy losses on the Turkic army twice in a row. This was a madman with extraordinary combat prowess. He was a brigadier general. Ishbara Khagan lived far away on Mount Sanmi. He had never paid much attention to this kind of regional war. He had never imagined that one of the top figures of the Western Turkic Khaganate would die at the hands of the seemingly unremarkable Wang Chong. If everything was true, he would have to re-evaluate this Wang Chong. Khagan, at a time like this, you're still concerned about something like this? Is our Hua's life not important? While Ishbara Khagan was still in the middle of his interrogation, the voice of a woman came from the side, brimming with worry. No matter who that Wang Chong is, the urgent task at hand is to rescue my son. A Turkic woman dressed in luxurious clothes and exuding a noble aura walked out from behind Ishbara Khagan. Kanan. The sight of this woman made the Turkic warrior on the ground shiver and lower his head even further. In all the Western Turks, only the mother of the fourth prince, Khatan, could enter the golden tent at any time and interrupt Ishbara Khagan's words. "Why have you come?" Ishbara Khagan hurriedly stepped forward and took the woman's hand, a look of doting affection on his face. Ishbara Khagan had experienced many women in his life, but only this woman before him was the one he respected the most and doted on the most. The reason was very simple. Back when Ishbara was still a prince, if not for the assistance of this woman, he would not have been able to ascend to the throne amidst the chaos. Not only that, although this woman was over 40 and had already given birth to several children, the Khatan had always taken good care of herself. Her skin and figure were like that of a girl in her 20s, not at all like that of someone in their 40s. If I didn't come, would I really have to watch Hur die at the hands of those Tang people of Chishi? Hur's life is hanging by a thread. Khagan, tell me, will you save Hur's life or not? The Khatan sternly said. Save. Hur is my own flesh and blood. I love him dearly, so how could I not save him? Come, hurry. Send someone to Wushang's city of steel. No matter what price we have to pay, we have to save the fourth prince. Ishbara Khagan's voice resounded over Mount Sanmi. There's a Turkic emissary outside requesting an audience. He says that he wishes to negotiate with us regarding the captured fourth prince. Several days later, in Wushang's city of steel, Wang Chong was standing in front of his desk, reading through a report he had gathered. Suddenly, a scout hurriedly barged in and bowed. I won't see him. Wang Chong didn't even raise his head, his eyes still focused on the report in his hand, his face expressionless. The scout froze, his face filled with shock, but he quickly regained his composure. With these words, he quickly left. Marquis, was I wrong? Ishbara Khagan and the Khatan are getting anxious. It's only been a few days, and they've already sent an emissary. As long as we don't agree for now and refuse them a few times, they'll get even more anxious. Milord will also be able to obtain even more benefits from the fourth prince. In this aspect, no one understands them better than I do. Once the scout left, Huleg heartily laughed and immediately approached, his eyes shining. In the future, I'll leave this matter to you, including the Turkic emissaries. But Huleg, you'd better think this through. I've investigated a few things. When Agudu Lan raided your estate, the fourth prince was also involved. Wang Chong finally raised his head from the letter and faintly smiled at Huleg. The Turkic steppe was vast and sparsely populated, and not even Wang Chong had the ability to investigate. But the nearby western regions was the best place to gather information. The Hu, Turks, and Arabs gathered there, so Wang Chong didn't need to expend much effort to obtain the information he wanted. What does that matter? I can take back all the things I lost. And even if he knows that I sold horses to you, I have a way to make him trust me and get Ishbara Khagan and the Khatan to pay the price we want. Huleg looked at Wang Chong, said, a crafty light in his eyes. Although the Turks revered bravery, Huleg was no warrior, but a shrewd merchant, and the #1 horse merchant of the Turkic steppe. When it came to business, he was completely different from others. That's even better. Wang Chong chuckled as he lowered his head and continued to read the news. While the emissaries of the Western Turkic Ishbara Khagan were running into a wall in Wushang's city of steel, in the distant capital of the Tang dynasty, the debate over the next Chishi Protector General had reached a fever pitch. Your Majesty, this subject recommends Black Tiger General Zhang Yi. Your Majesty, this subject recommends Crouching Wave General Duan Xian. Your Majesty, this subject recommends Frontier General Li Ji. In the short span of a few days, the number of candidates for Chishi Protector General had increased from 10 some to more than 200. There were all sorts of reasons for their recommendations. Some had rich experience, some had experience leading the Hu, some had made rapid progress in strength, and some had performed exceptionally well in the last few years. Even though the vast majority of people didn't meet the requirements, the people who had recommended them all gave the same reason. Let them try. If they didn't try, how would they know that it wouldn't work? In the hall, the first row of civil and military officials was next to a scarlet pillar with a coiling dragon. The king of Song, dressed in his imperial robe, leaned against the coiling dragon pillar. As he listened to the voices in his ears, he couldn't help but give a long sigh. 7 or 8 days had passed, and not only had the debate over the Chishi Protector General not died down, it had only intensified. Everyone had their own goals, recommending the candidate that they felt was the most suitable for them. But truthfully speaking, even though there were more than 200 people, in the King of Song's mind, there was not a single one that was suitable. Whether it was his own recommendation of Wang Yan or King Qi's recommendation of Yao Guangyi, in the King of Song's mind, they were both barely satisfactory. Matters of state were no trifling matter. Thus, in this period of time, not even Wang Yan and the King of Song had been recommending much. A country can't go a day without a sovereign, and the border can't go a day without a general. Just who can replace Fomenlinta to oversee the border and protect Chishi? The King of Song raised his head to the majestic ceiling of the hall, his mind in turmoil. In truth, he didn't care about the arguments of the officials. What he cared about was the most suitable candidate. But finding a suitable candidate was easier said than done. The entire Tang dynasty only had a few great generals, and all of them were already in their respective positions. Finding another great general was not difficult, but simply impossible. This was the true reason why the problem of Chishi had still not been resolved. In the vast Great Tang, could it be that you really can't find a suitable candidate? The King of Song couldn't help but deeply furrow his brow. This was an unsolvable conundrum. The problem of Chishi was far too complex. The Turks, the Uzun, the Arabs, Karak-Spazinu, and there was also the problem of the foreigners and the Han within the Chishi Protectorate. It was basically impossible to find someone who could satisfy all these conditions. This was what troubled the King of Song the most. The arguments in the hall were getting more and more intense. These arguments had been going on for several days, and just when the King of Song was about to leave in a huff, hurried footsteps came from outside the hall. Reporting. Victory in Chishi. 4 days ago, the Black Wolf Yabgu of the Western Turkic Khaganate launched a night raid on the Chishi armory and was ambushed by Wushang's young Marquis Wang Chong and his soldiers. 4,568 Turkic elites were slain, including the Black Wolf Yabgu Agudulan. A golden insignia guard held a golden ancient halberd in one hand and a report in the other as he respectfully knelt on the ground, not moving an inch. Rumble. The news brought by the Chamberlain of Imperial Insignia caused a huge uproar in the hall. Although not many people knew of the name Agudulan, they all knew of the name Yabgu. Chapter 8:38. More importantly, although very few people knew the name of Agudulan, the name of the Black Wolf Yabgu was frequently mentioned in the imperial court. This person's name was almost always on the list of invading enemies from Chishi and Baiting. This person was definitely one of the core members of the Western Turkic Khaganate's warmongering faction, one of the Turkic upper echelons that gave both Chishi and Baiting great headaches. No one had expected that this person, who had a reputation in the imperial court of the Tang dynasty and was viewed by the Tang dynasty as a major threat to the northern steppe, would die at the hands of Wang Chong. How could this be? This Black Wolf Yabgu has always been crafty. Baiting and Chishi tried to kill him several times, but he always managed to escape. How could he die in Chishi? Fomenlinta wasn't able to kill him in Chishi, so how could Fomenlinta have left, leaving Chishi leaderless and the Black Wolf Yabgu dead? Could it be a false report? This kind of problem has occurred before. Everyone thought that the Black Wolf Yabgu had died in Baiting, but then he suddenly became as lively as a tiger and reappeared. How could this be? This sort of thing might happen to others, but how could it happen to the young Marquis? He made such a great contribution in the southwest that even His Majesty bestowed him a courtesy name. How could he not recognize the Black Wolf Yabgu? An official report of victory to the imperial court is no trifling matter. The hall was abuzz with chatter. All the military officials knew of the Black Wolf Yabgu's background and were stunned. As for the civil officials, although there were some who doubted Wang Chong, the majority firmly believed him. After all, Duke Jiao had been the head of the civil officials when he was still on the throne. Moreover, he was a person of noble character, a person of virtue and prestige, deeply respected by the people of the world. His grandson would never make a false report for the sake of military merit. Bring out the report. At this moment, a gentle voice came from the upper reaches of the hall. Chief Eunuch Gao Lishur, who was standing beside the Holy Emperor, waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and suddenly spoke. In an instant, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the guardian of insignia who had delivered the letter. They watched as the guardian of insignia stood up, passed through the center of the hall, and walked upwards. Amidst the crowd, no one noticed that the King of Song's gaze was closely following the figure of the guardian of insignia. His brows were tightly knitted together as a vague thought flashed through his mind. In the great hall, Eunuch Gao received the memorial from the Golden Guards and passed it behind the bead curtain. A moment later, the report reappeared in Eunuch Gao's hands. The identity of the Black Wolf Yabgu has been confirmed. The Yabgu's seal and tiger tally, as well as the Black Wolf Yabgu's head, are already on their way to the capital. Eunuch Gao's face was ruddy, and he smiled as he looked at the officials below the stage. Buzz. The hall buzzed with activity, and now, no one had any objections. Just like the Tang dynasty, high-ranking Turkic officials of the Yabgu's level all had their own Yabgu's seal on their bodies. The Yabgu's seal was the best way to verify one's identity. The Black Wolf Yabgu would never so easily discard his Yabgu's seal. If Wang Chong had killed the Black Wolf Yabgu in Qixi and obtained the Yabgu's seal, then there was basically no doubt about the Black Wolf Yabgu's identity. I didn't think that he really would kill the Black Wolf Yabgu. Everyone in the hall felt a deep throbbing in their hearts. The Black Wolf Yabgu, who had dominated the Northwest and rarely met his match, had truly died at the hands of Wang Chong. This crafty foe had met his end in the Northwest in such a shocking and unexpected manner, and the one who had killed him was a youth of 16 or 17. The Wang clan's Qilin's son truly lives up to his reputation. Everyone was deeply stunned by this news. Your Majesty, this subject has a memorial. As the hall buzzed with chatter and the officials discussed, the King of Song suddenly stepped out of his ranks and loudly declared to the Holy Emperor. His words immediately attracted the attention of all the civil and military officials in the hall. Your Highness the King of Song, speak. Eunuch Gao, who seemed to understand the will of the heavens, said with a faint smile. This subject has an idea about the candidate for the new Qixi Protector General. This lowly subject strongly recommends the young Marquis of Wushang, Wang Chong, to be the new Qixi Protector General. The King of Song clasped his hands and solemnly declared. Bang! Like a massive meteor crashing into the hall, the King of Song's words immediately set off a massive uproar among the officials. Absurd. Before the other officials could say anything, King Qi was the first to jump out. The King of Song, have you gone mad? That Wang Chong is only a half-grown brat, and you're actually recommending him for Qixi Protector General. Which one of the candidates recommended by these officials isn't more qualified than that Wang Chong? If even he can become Qixi Protector General, doesn't that mean anyone else can? How can a brat who still smells of his mother's milk convince the masses? King Qi was extremely agitated. Putting aside his personal grudges with the King of Song and having clashed with the King of Song so many times, the King of Song's performance this time had left King Qi most shocked. No one with a brain would recommend a 16 or 17-year-old boy for the important position of Qixi Protector General. Even if he didn't have so many personal grudges with the King of Song, King Qi would never agree. This was the most absurd proposal King Qi had ever heard. Your Highness, forgive this one for being so bold. Although this old subject has always treated Your Highness with great respect, isn't Your Highness's proposal a little too rash? There is no precedent in the empire for a 17-year-old to become Qixi Protector General and command tens of thousands of soldiers. Isn't it a little inappropriate for Your Highness to propose him as Qixi Protector General? Even the elderly imperial censor Hao couldn't help but step forward and object. Your Highness, no. I know that Your Highness has been on good terms with the Wang clan for several generations, but the Qixi Protector General position concerns the safety of the entire western regions and the tens of thousands of soldiers in Qixi. Isn't putting a 17-year-old child in such an important position too childish? Abusi finds it difficult to agree. Even the Tongluo Great General Abusi, who rarely interfered in the court, couldn't help but step forward. In the Kunwa training camp, Wang Chong had tied up his son Abutong and hung him naked from a bamboo pole in front of everyone, causing the father and son to lose all face. The King of Song's proposal for Wang Chong to become Qixi Protector General was absolutely unacceptable to Abusi. That's right. There are quite a few who in the Qixi Protectorate, and after the regional commander's incident, the relationship between Wang Chong and them became very strained. The soldiers of Qixi even joined together to impeach Wang Chong and demand that he be executed. And now, Wang Chong has also impeached Fomenlinta. How can the Hu of Qixi submit to him? If he becomes Qixi Protector General, won't it cause Qixi to become even more divided? Not only will it not help Qixi's stability, it will only add hail to snow. Please forgive me for finding it very difficult to agree. Another official from the imperial court also stepped out and objected. That's right. Putting aside everything else, he probably won't be satisfied with just martial arts. This cannot be allowed. One official after another, the King of Song's words incited a massive debate in the court, with more than half of the civil and military officials standing up to oppose the King of Song. Your Highness. This time, even Wang Chong's big uncle, Wang Zhen, was staring at the King of Song, his eyes wide and speechless. The King of Song's proposal was far too bold. Not even he could say such a thing. In terms of seniority, wasn't even Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, more suitable than Wang Chong? Wang Zhen simply couldn't understand why the King of Song would bring up Wang Chong instead of Wang Yan. Elsewhere, the newly appointed Minister of War, Zhangqiu Jianqiong, and Yang Zhao, who was standing next to the coiling dragon pillar, were also exchanging surprised glances. Not even they had expected the King of Song's proposal. But at a time like this, the two of them had wisely chosen to remain silent and watch the situation develop. The King of Song still maintained his calm, a smile on his lips as he listened to the fierce objections of the officials. The vague idea in his mind grew clearer and clearer, and the smile on his lips grew wider and wider. Your Majesty and my colleagues, I believe that the young Marquis, Wang Chong, is not only suitable for the position of Qixi Protector General, but also the best candidate. In the entire empire, there is no one more suitable than him for the position of Qixi Protector General. The King of Song had a composed expression, a faint smile on his face. His every movement exuded a powerful and infectious confidence. I know why all of you oppose him. It's just that he's young and inexperienced, not enough to convince the masses. Moreover, Wang Chong has clashed with all the Hu in the empire. But I believe that suitability for Qixi Protector General is based on ability, not these minor details. Qixi's position is extremely unique. It is the throat between the interior and the western regions. To the left is the tall and thin Uzun Plateau, where the Uzun cavalry could charge down at any moment and plunder the central plains. To the right is the Turkic steppe, the territory of the Western Turkic Khaganate. These two factions have always been a mortal malady to our Tang dynasty. We discussed the selection of Qixi Protector General as quickly as possible in order to prevent the soldiers of these two empires from invading in the chaos. But now, everyone can see what Qixi is like now that Fomenlinta has left. On the left is the Uzun Plateau. After the Battle of the Triangular Gap, the Uzun army suffered grievous casualties, at least 100,000 soldiers. Even an imperial brigadier general like Dian Mangpoj died there. Dusong Mangpoj has also fled, and it will probably be a very long time before they can find suitable soldiers to invade the interior. As for the east, the greatest danger is the Black Wolf Yabgu Agudulan, but now, even Agudulan is dead. And this is even when Wang Chong has not yet taken up the post of Qixi Protector General. Before he has even become Qixi Protector General, he has already done everything that a Qixi Protector General should do, resolving the complex situation of a pincer attack on Qixi. May I ask, if he is not suitable for Qixi Protector General, who is more suitable? The more the King of Song spoke, the clearer he became, and the more determined he was to recommend Wang Chong as Qixi Protector General. And have all of you forgotten how Wang Chong overturned the tide in the War of the Southwest and defeated Mengshi Zhao and Uzun? Even famed generals like Duan Gichuan, Huoshu Huaitsong, and Daluan Ruozan had been defeated by him, and now Dusong Mangpoj had joined the fray as well. He had even survived such formidable foes and difficult circumstances, and he had even killed more than 400,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army. If even this sort of experience was said to be insufficiently experienced, then what could be considered insufficiently experienced? In the Great Qin Empire of more than 1,000 years ago, Gan Luo became prime minister at the age of 12, and Wang Chong became Qixi protector general at the age of 17. Chapter 839. It was true. Given Wang Chong's achievements, this was not something a 17-year-old youth could accomplish. Moreover, his actions could not be measured by age. King Song's words left everyone speechless, and for a moment, even King Qi found himself unable to find any words to refute. But, according to the rules of the empire, Protector General and Great General need to be at least at the peak of the Saint Martial realm. Moreover, he has such a deep grudge with those who will definitely not submit to him. How can this matter be resolved? After some time, one of the generals who had vehemently opposed the King of Song finally stepped forward, but his voice was much softer and less intense. Haha, that's even easier to resolve. The King of Song heartily laughed. I recommended Wang Chong because he can stabilize the situation in Qixi. Since his martial arts are still lacking, he can temporarily hold the post of Qixi Protector General. As for those they can be used as a test for him. If he can't even resolve this problem, then it will prove that I made the wrong choice, that he is not capable enough to hold the post of Qixi Protector General. When the time comes, Your Majesty can remove him from the post. As soon as Song Yunchuan's voice fell, even the general couldn't say anything to object. Preposterous, preposterous, preposterous. To let a 17-year-old boy hold the post of Qixi Protector General, you're insane. In any case, no matter what, I will never agree. King Qi finally couldn't hold back his rage. We're just recommending candidates. In the end, His Majesty will decide who the Qixi Protector General will be. As for your opinion, it's not important. Leave everything to His Majesty to decide. The King of Song heartily laughed, not arguing with King Qi. Instead, he turned his head to look at the figure seated behind the bead curtain on the most exalted throne of the Central Plains, his expression brimming with confidence. The hall was quiet, no one speaking. From the beginning until now, it had been 7 or 8 days. Everyone had provided a total of more than 200 candidates, which was enough. It was time to choose the most suitable one. Approved. After what seemed like an instant, but also like countless eons, as everyone silently waited, a dignified and noble voice, like that of a god from the 9 heavens, resounded through the hall. At that moment, everyone, including King Qi, was flabbergasted, their minds blank. Yes, Your Majesty. The next moment, the King of Song's voice reverberated throughout the hall. He looked excited. Although he tried his best to suppress it, he couldn't help but smile wider and wider. Success. His Majesty had actually approved of Wang Chong's proposal to replace Qixi Protector General. The King of Song was elated. This could be said to be the best news he had heard during this period of time. Wang Chong, I've tried my best to help you. The rest is up to you. The King of Song quietly said to himself, his mind recalling Wang Chong in distant Qixi. In the city of Steel, upon hearing the news from the capital, Wang Chong was dumbfounded, not daring to believe his ears. The King of Song recommended me to become Qixi Protector General, and His Majesty even approved it? He had been in Wushang for 3 or 4 months, fighting several major battles, but this news had left Wang Chong even more shocked and surprised. He had thought of many people, but he had never imagined that the King of Song would recommend him, and that the Holy Emperor had even approved it. Even with Wang Chong's ability to devise strategies that could determine victory from 1,000 li away, this news still left him flabbergasted. How could this be? I'm only 17. Given the style of the officials of the court, how could they allow a 17-year-old to assume the important position of Protector General? Where's the letter from the King of Song? Let me see it. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, truly stunned by this news. Marquis, although Sir is only 17, no one in the city of Steel would dare to treat Sir as one. Ask the surrounding countries, whether it's the Uzan, the Turks, or the distant Mengshi Zhao of the southwest, Who would dare to treat Sir as a 17-year-old? Su Kui couldn't help but chuckle as he handed over the letter from the King of Song to Wang Chong. The others around him also had the same reaction. No matter what others think, in our eyes, no one in the entire Tang dynasty is more suited to the position of Qixi Protector General than Marquis. In truth, the imperial court should have done this long ago. Cheng Sanyuan and the others couldn't help but say, the imperial court values ability, not age. Why is Marquis so unconfident at a time like this? Even Li Sai opened his mouth at this moment. A buzzing voice came from beside his ear. It was as if a great bell had rung out, and even Li Sai opened his mouth. Wang Chong inwardly gave a bitter smile. He had been rather surprised, but he hadn't expected that his subordinates would be so unhappy. All of them felt that he should have been Protector General a long time ago. Hee, you're probably the only one who's still lost in the game. Even His Majesty thinks that you can do it, so do you think that you can't? At the very least, I believe in you. There's no problem. Su Yiqin sat on an exquisite pear-blossom chair, her fingers as white as spring onions. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. Although the King of Song's letter was rather surprising, it was not unexpected. As for the people gathered around Wang Chong, none of them were surprised. This was a person who could reverse the tides and pacify the southwest, a person who could defeat the White Braves at the Triangular Gap, kill Dian Mangpoj, and scare away Dusong Mangpoj, a person who could trick a crafty and cautious person like the Black Wolf Yapgua Gudulan into a trap and bury him in Qixi. If not even this sort of person could become Qixi Protector General, then no one in the entire Tang dynasty could sit on this position. At the very least, this was what Su Yiqin and the others thought. Wang Chong smiled, a warmth in his heart. He quickly calmed down and began to read the letter from the King of Song. In the letter, the King of Song gave a rough account of the matter, and he also told Wang Chong that this letter was just an advance notice. The official appointment from the imperial court would arrive soon, and the emissary announcing the decree had already left the capital for Wushang. But even so, the news of the appointment had already been sent to the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, as well as all the great generals and protector generals of the Tang dynasty on the border. All the titled generals of the Tang dynasty, whether Hu or Han, knew of this news. From a certain perspective, Wang Chong was already Qixi Protector General. In addition, the King of Song had also mentioned that Wang Chong's martial arts were insufficient, so he was only temporarily acting as Qixi Protector General. But if all went according to the usual practice of the imperial court, as long as Wang Chong did not make any mistakes, once his martial arts improved, he would officially become Qixi Protector General. In the history of the Tang dynasty, there had never been a Protector General at such a young age. But the King of Song had also given Wang Chong a warning. The Qixi Protectorate was currently in chaos, and there were many factions. Moreover, after Wang Chong had toppled Fomin Linta, he had angered many people in the Qixi Protectorate. At the very least, the Hu would not submit to him, and many of them would probably view him as an enemy. This was also a problem that Wang Chong had to resolve. If he could not resolve this problem, Wang Chong's position as Qixi Protector General would be a flower in the mirror, a moon in the water. He would not be able to hold on for long. Thus, Wang Chong's position as Qixi Protector General was far from stable. However, the King of Song had already given a strong guarantee to the Holy Emperor that Wang Chong would definitely be able to resolve this problem. Thus, if Wang Chong made a mistake, the King of Song would definitely be drawn in as well. Your Highness is truly confident in me. This means that the position of Qixi Protector General must be mine. Wang Chong looked at the letter in his hand, his lips curling into a confident smile. Bastard! Wang Chong, how could it be that Wang Chong? Has the imperial court lost its mind? Even if they pulled a random person on the side of the road, they can't let that brat become our leader. Great General was framed and imprisoned by that fellow, and that bastard even wants to expel us. Who? Did he really think that we would forget so quickly? Absolutely not. No matter what the imperial court says, I will never recognize him as Protector General. If everyone still remembers how well Protector General was protected, then stand with me. I don't believe that that bastard would dare to do anything to all of us. 2 to 300 li from Wushang, in the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, the news that the imperial court had appointed Wang Chong as Qixi Protector General was like poking a hornet's nest, causing the entire Qixi Protectorate headquarters to explode. Within the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, a large group of high-ranking Hu generals with hawk-like eyes, deep-nosed noses, and thick beards had gathered to argue with one another. Even though they had all been fighting to the death over the position of Qixi Protector General, at least at this moment, they had all reached a consensus on how to deal with that Wang Chong of Wushang's City of Steel. Everyone listen up. I don't care what you think. The new Protector General can be you, it can be me, it can be any one of us, but it can't be a Han. The Qixi Protector General has to be a Hu, and this is a condition that all of us have to accept. So what if the imperial court has appointed that brat as Qixi Protector General? Don't forget, there's a saying that goes, "The heavens are high, the emperor is far away." While the Qixi Protectorate headquarters was in an uproar, a muscular Hu with deep green eyes and a thick beard tinged with brown at the ends jumped onto an empty metal table. His face was fierce, like that of a savage beast that had starved for 10-some days. Just his gaze was enough to make one's heart tremble. Chapter 840. Gujilai, what are you planning to do? Don't forget, that brat is a marquis of the Tang dynasty. Do you dare to act against him? A Hu general called out from the crowd. You might be afraid of him, but I'm not. Gujilai stood on the hollow metal table, his expression savage and his eyes gleaming with a savage light. As long as you dare to follow me, I'll teach him a lesson. He's just a half-grown brat, and the hair on his mouth hasn't even grown out yet. Do you really want to listen to him? And don't forget, how did Lord Fomenlinta treat you in the past? Did he give you all any good missions? Now is the time to take revenge for Milord. Don't you want to take revenge for Milord? That's right. Milord's kindness to us is as heavy as a mountain. If we don't take revenge for Milord, won't we be the same as those cowardly Han? That's right. Take revenge for Milord. So what if the imperial court ordered it? We should submit a memorial to the imperial court and have them release Milord. At the mention of great General Fomenlinta, everyone was instantly moved by Gujilai. Good. As long as you follow me, let's not talk about killing him. At the very least, I'll make it so that he can no longer have a foothold in the Qixi Protectorate and scram. In the territory of the Hu, we who should be the ones in charge. Gujilai saw that it was about time and immediately began to encourage them. Good. In the territory of the Hu should be the ones in charge. Gudu Li's words made the blood of the group of people boil. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire hall was filled with a thunderous roar, as if there was a landslide or a tsunami. Milord, what do we do? The cheers of the crowd rose from the hall, passing through the roof and spreading far, far away. Several hundred meters away from the Protectorate headquarters, several cavalrymen had gathered together. One of the young Hu turned his head and uneasily looked at the Hu general behind him. This is troublesome, Heba Yi pretended not to hear, his eyes fixed on the distance. Gujilai was one of Fomenlinta's trusted aides, but he did not have any real power at first. However, with his identity as a trusted aide and his ability to motivate people, Gujilai's reputation in the Qixi Protectorate was even higher than that of the commander of the Uzun defense line. In addition, Gujilai's views were completely different from his. This was also the reason why he did not enter the hall. Wang Chong isn't as easy to deal with as you think. Heba Yi recalled the scene of Wang Chong charging through the triangular gap, leading the 5,000 Wushang cavalry and sweeping through everything before finally killing Dian Mangpoch. A chill ran through Heba Ye's heart. That youth from the City of Steel's Tang dynasty was definitely the most frightening opponent on the battlefield. He would rather be his ally than his enemy. Let's go! Heba Yi turned his horse around and quickly disappeared in the direction of the Uzun highlands. Meanwhile, as carrier pigeons flew to the various borders, the news that Wang Chong had become the new Qixi Protector General began to spread. Unlike the complicated reactions in the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, the news was much simpler in the various borders of the Tang dynasty. What? The City of Steel's Wang Chong has become Qixi Protector General? In the Anxi Protectorate headquarters, Gao Xianji's eyes widened in disbelief at this news. How could this be? How could those old officials of the court agree? Putting aside everything else, his martial arts aren't even at the peak of the Saint Martial realm, and there are so many experienced generals in the army. Were they all rejected? The old officials of the court truly didn't agree, but the King of Song stood his ground and strongly recommended him. In addition, his martial arts truly aren't enough, so he's only temporarily acting Protector General, not the true Protector General. In addition, I've investigated. Feng Changqing was standing not far from Gao Xianji. He looked up at his commander, hesitated for a moment, and then continued. After a moment of hesitation, he continued. Just before the imperial court's order, he ambushed the Black Wolf Yabgu at the Qixi Armory and killed Agudulan, as well as the 5,000 Turkic elites Agudulan had brought with him. Buzz. Gao Xianji shivered at Feng Changqing's words, but he quickly calmed down. Wang Chong had just killed the Uzun Brigadier General Dian Mengpoj at the Battle of the Triangular Gap and annihilated the White Braves that had intimidated the western regions. In a little more than a month, Wang Chong had killed the Black Wolf Yabgu and Agudulan. In less than 2 months, 2 of the most famous generals of Qixi had died at Wang Chong's hands. At this moment, not even Gao Xianji could say anything. When the all is in the bag, it's obvious at the end. It seems like the light of the youngest son of the Wang clan can't be concealed. Gao Xianji sighed. At this moment, his heart was filled with emotions. He was not a Han, so his background was completely different from that of the other Han generals. From an ordinary infantry soldier to the current Anxi Protector General, Gao Xianji had put in so much effort, so much blood, and so much effort. Just to stand out among Fomin Linta's subordinates and escape his control, Gao Xianji had experienced countless dangers and barely escaped death. This was completely different from Wang Chong's meteoric rise, reaching the position of interim Protector General in just a year. Even Gao Xianji had to admit that he was a little jealous, feeling like the new waves of the Yangtze River were replacing the old. But even so, Gao Xianji had to admit that Wang Chong's current accomplishments had not only been due to his birth and luck. The talent, and art of command that he had displayed in these past few battles had been transcendent and outstanding. Even an imperial great general like Gao Xianji had been stunned. Wang Chong's abilities truly had reached a level that far surpassed his peers. Even Gao Xianji himself, at the age of 17, couldn't compare to Wang Chong. Not only that, my lord. If that Wang Chong becomes the acting Qixi Protector General, many of our strategies will have to change. We can no longer simply suppress and resist. Qixi is responsible for transporting our supplies and soldiers, and in the future, we will need to make many requests of them, so we will have to interact with them. Feng Changqing said, a hint of apprehension in his eyes. At the start, although Wang Chong was a member of a clan of ministers and generals, the grandson of Duke Jiao, the son of Heaven's disciple, and the young Marquis, this was still the western border, a place far away from the emperor. There were many things that Gao Xianji and Feng Changqing did not care about. But now that Wang Chong had become the acting Qixi Protector General and seized control of the road to Qixi, everything had changed. They had to admit that the imperial court's order had truly caught them off guard. Neither of them had expected this. Gao Xianji said nothing, but his thick brows creased. It was clear that he was thinking the same thing as Feng Changqing. But Milord does not need to worry too much. There are many who in Qixi, and the young Marquis still has a very long way to go before he can truly become Protector General. Once he has overcome this trial, we can consider getting in touch with him. Feng Changqing said, "Che, that's all we can do." Gao Xianji gave a long sigh. At the same time, in the distant Big Dipper city of Longxi, the news that Wang Chong had become Qixi Protector General caused a stir that was no less shocking than the one in Anxi. A 17-year-old Imperial Protector General? How could there be such a thing? Not only was it approved by the Imperial Court, even His Majesty has permitted it. Geshu Han was in a state of shock as he held the news from the capital. Not even when the King of Generals of the Uzun Empire, the White Lion Great General Witadra Konglo, had appeared had he been so shocked. That was because it was truly too surprising. He had been paying attention to the debate in the imperial court this entire time. So many officials had recommended so many experienced candidates for Qixi Protector General, but Geshu Han had never expected that the final result would be the unthinkable of the Northwest, Wang Chong. In truth, it wasn't just Geshu Han. All the officers of the Big Dipper army at his side were in a state of deep shock. When the news from the capital reached this place, it was like a bomb in the deep waters, giving everyone an unprecedented shock and shock. Unbelievable! In just 1 year, he became Qixi Protector General. There's also the Qixi Armory established by the imperial household in Qixi. Our Big Dipper Protectorate Army needs to go there every year to collect our armaments. In this way, our Big Dipper Army of Longxi will be under his control in the future. Did I hear it wrong? Protector General. With his current achievements, his name will probably be left in the annals of history, admired for thousands of years to come. But isn't he too young? Why did the imperial court approve it? This won't convince the masses. Convince the masses? Do you still think he's an ordinary young man? In the War of the Southwest, he killed more than 400,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army, and now he's killed Dian Mengpoj and Agudulan, and countless Uzun and Turkic warriors have been buried with them. He's a god of death. Do you think that the imperial court just casually recommended him? His current achievements aren't something that the imperial court can ignore just because it wants to. In the hall, every officer of the Big Dipper army was deeply stunned. When Wang Chong had first arrived in Wushang and begun to build the City of Steel, everyone had treated him as an outsider. Even though he had made heaven-shaking contributions in the Southwest, in the eyes of everyone else, he was still a half-grown brat. A single success didn't prove anything. Sometimes, it was luck, other times it was chance. It didn't mean that one's strength was extraordinary or outstanding. Perhaps it was just a flash in the pan. But no one had expected that Wang Chong would not only build the massive and majestic City of Steel in Wushang, but he would also make great contributions, defeating the Uzun, defeating the Turks, killing important generals like Dian Mengpoj and Agudulan, and finally ascending to the position of Qixi Protector General. Chapter 841. Milord, then do we still need to continue dealing with Wang Chong? Qing Zhe has already contacted all the 240,000 bandits and highwaymen on the Silk Road. In addition, should we continue with the order forbidding Longxi's vegetable merchants, grain, and fruits from selling to Wushang? A solemn voice suddenly interrupted the mood in the room. Next to Geshu Han, a burly bearded general with a beard of high status suddenly spoke up. When Wang Chong had just arrived in Wushang, Geshu Han had given him a test by ordering Qing Zhe to deal with Wang Chong so that it would be difficult for Wang Chong to establish a foothold in Wushang. The most obvious and practical method was to forbid the sale of grain, vegetables, fruits, and all other necessities to Wushang. The closest Wushang could get supplies from the Central Plains was Longxi. Of all the riches in the world, none surpass Longxi. This was a saying that in the Central Plains, Longxi was the wealthiest. The land there was fertile and vast, making it the most convenient place to get supplies. In the capital, Wang Chong had promised that he would develop Wushang into a unique commercial hub on the Silk Road, a transit hub that would provide rest, supplies, and protection for the merchants traveling the Silk Road. If he wanted to provide for so many people and the daily needs of the garrison, there was no other place but Longxi. As for Qixi, one only needed to think about the meaning of the word Qi. It was already quite impressive that such a barren land bordering the desert could provide for so many soldiers. It would be impossible for Wang Chong to obtain such a large amount of supplies from Qixi. When the time came, Wang Chong would have no choice but to get supplies from the capital. And the journey from the capital to Wushang was a long one, and with the 240,000 bandits and highwaymen on the way, one could easily imagine the result. But now that Wang Chong had been promoted to Qixi Protector General, everything was different. If Geshu Han dared to do this again, it would no longer be a minor test, but a direct declaration of war against Wang Chong. The empire's Protector Generals and Great Generals were all influential figures, and a battle between two Protector Generals was no trifling matter. Even Geshu Han had to seriously consider the pros and cons. Geshu Han said nothing. He raised his head and gazed at the blackened roof of Big Dipper City, a complicated look in his eyes. The Tang dynasty of the Central Plains had been at peace for many years, and the power structure at the top level had already solidified. In Geshu Han's memories, the candidates for Protector Generals and Great Generals had already been solidified. However, Wang Chong's appearance and his lightning-fast promotion completely broke this rule. In a sharp and incisive manner that caught everyone off guard and made them completely unaccustomed, he had swiftly moved from the southwest to the northwest, all the way to the position of Chishi Protector General. Geshu Han's life had been full of ups and downs, and he had weathered many storms and waves, but he had never encountered such a situation. Daluan Ruozan, Huashu Wizong, Duan Gichuan, Dusong Mangpoj, Dian Mangpoj, Agudu Lan. Although I still feel that the imperial court is lacking in consideration for promoting a 17-year-old protector general so quickly, he truly did rely on his own strength to reach his current position. Tell Qing Zhe to withdraw. Those bandits and brigands have all been disbanded, and all the plans we've made have been cancelled. Times have changed, and we can't challenge another protector general. Geshu Han gave a long sigh. Yes. A Big Dipper officer quickly left with the order. Biting Enong. The news that Wang Chong had been promoted to Chishi Protector General had sent shockwaves through the political circles of the empire. At the same time, in the distant Uzan Empire, the atmosphere was completely different from that of the Central Plains. The massive royal capital was deathly still. In the core of the royal palace, blue smoke rose up from a furnace, enveloping the main hall. However, no one spoke. Everyone's eyes were focused on a single place. It was a golden, hollowed table that was around 4 feet tall. It was engraved with scriptures that exuded a mysterious aura. On the table, a black messenger pigeon with golden eyes was cawing, freely looking around as if it couldn't sense the tension in the hall at all. But everyone knew that the strange and oppressive atmosphere in the hall was because of the news this pigeon had brought not long ago. Your Majesty, although Fomenlinta has left, an even more formidable Wang Chong has come, and he has even taken over Fomenlinta's position. I'm afraid that this is extremely disadvantageous to our Uzan Empire. A voice in the hall worriedly said. In the War of the Southwest, the destruction of Zhangsheng training camp, the miserable defeat at the Triangular Gap, if you add it all up, we've already lost more than 400,000 elite cavalry to this Tang dynasty youth. The plague on the plateau still hasn't been completely stopped, and the dead and wounded have piled up into mountains and seas. Now, he's even become Chishi Protector General. He's truly a mortal malady to our Uzan Empire. And he's even built a city on our Uzan Plateau. This is something that has never happened before. Another voice added. In the past, the Uzan Empire feared Zhangzhou Jinxiong, Geshu Han, Fomenlinta, and Gao Xinji, the 4 great generals of the Tang dynasty. But now, another name had rapidly surpassed these 4, becoming the most dreaded existence in the Uzan Empire. This person was Wang Chong. Although the Uzan Empire had lost in its wars with the Tang dynasty, even having its strongest great general of the Tang dynasty push his way all the way to the royal capital, those had been regular battles, and it was clear at a glance where they had lost and where they had been weak. No one had ever been like Wang Chong, using the plague in addition to regular warfare. Moreover, his ability to command troops in close combat had far surpassed any of the famous generals of the Tang dynasty that the Uzan Empire had ever encountered. Not only that, in the Battle of Zhangsheng, Wang Chong had managed to avoid all eyes and ears, traveling a great distance to appear in the heart of the Uzan Plateau, destroying the entire Zhangsheng training camp and the 8,000 Qinghai recruits in a single blow. This made the entire Uzan Empire uneasy, because there was no doubt that Wang Chong had a secret passage that led directly to the heart of the Uzan Plateau. If they couldn't find this secret passage, it meant that Wang Chong could avoid all eyes and ears at any time, enter the plateau from there at any time, and then leave as he pleased. This was equivalent to having a long knife pressed against your neck at any time, and you didn't even know where this knife was coming from, nor how to avoid it. Your Majesty, no matter what, we must find a way to get rid of this Wang Chong. Otherwise, we won't just be like we are now, unable to enter and leave the northeast freely. I'm afraid that the entire northern border will be completely sealed off by him. Almost all the famous generals of the Uzun Empire in the hall were looking at the figure at the top of the hall. Up in the hall, the Tsenpo didn't say anything. He just listened to the discussions of the officials in the hall, and his thick eyebrows furrowed tighter and tighter, his heart abnormally agitated. A great war, a great war. Get rid of Wang Chong. How could he not know that he should do everything he could to get rid of that youth from the Tang dynasty? But Daluan Ruozhen had failed, Hoshu Wuzong had failed, Dian Pujiel had failed, Dian Mangpoj had failed, and Dusong Mangpoj had also failed. 3 of the empire's most formidable great generals and prime minister had lost to Wang Chong, and they had even lost the more than 200,000 soldiers that the Ngari royal lineage had accumulated over 10-some years, as well as countless cows and sheep. That boy from the Tang dynasty was still alive, but the Uzun Empire was on the verge of collapsing from the losses it had suffered. Enough! Suddenly, a voice resounded through the hall. This voice was not harsh, but abnormally mellow. But the entire hall was deathly still, everyone keeping their mouths shut. Pass on my order to all the armies to stay far away from the northern border. No more battles are allowed in the northern border. This voice was neither loud nor soft, and it was tinged with an order. In all of the Uzun Empire, only the Prime Minister, Dalen Trinling, could interject in front of the Tsenpo and issue such an order. As expected, the moment Dalen Trinling spoke, all the officials and generals in the hall became submissive, all their viciousness vanishing without a trace. Even the Tsenpo appeared much more relaxed. The empire has already lost enough soldiers in the northern border. Even Dian Mangpoj died there and Dusong Mangpoj returned with heavy injuries. It's no longer suitable for another battle in the short term. Does Dusong clan head, Dusong Mangpoj, know where he is? In addition, how are his injuries? Dalen Trinling held his hands behind his back, his narrow eyes suffused with intelligence as he turned his head to a tall and muscular figure in the hall. Many thanks for Prime Minister's concern. Ever since Mangpoj returned from the last battle, he went to the Great Snow Mountain Temple and has been kneeling there for a long time. Even now, he still has not returned, nor has he contacted us. Dusong Gongjue bowed. The Dusong clan and the Dian clan were 2 extremely ancient clans that had been passed down through the generations of the Uzun Empire. Dusong Gongjue was the current head of the Dusong clan. Dusong Mangpoj was known as the Eagle of the Dusong clan, the most outstanding individual of his generation, and also a great general of the Uzun Empire. When Dusong Gongjue heard that Dusong Mangpoj had abandoned his army and fled at the Triangular Gap, he had felt ashamed and humiliated. But when he saw Dusong Mangpoj's horrifying wounds on his return, Dusong Gongjue couldn't even bring himself to say a single word of rebuke. It was obvious that Dusong Mangpoj had been through unimaginable dangers. If he had not reacted quickly and escaped, it would not have been just the tens of thousands of soldiers who would have died at the Triangular Gap. Even Dusong Mangpoj, the most outstanding representative of the Dusong clan, a great general of the Uzun Empire, would have died at the Triangular Gap. That was something that the Dusong clan would find hard to endure. At the very least, Dusong Mangpoj had survived. This was the most important thing. I understand. Dalen Trinling nodded. His face was devoid of emotion, but there was a glimmer of light in the depths of his eyes. Tens of thousands of elites had died at the Triangular Gap, and even the Dian clan's Dian Mangpoj had died there. Right now, the one blaming himself the most was probably Dusong Mangpoj. This was also why he had gone to the Great Snow Mountain Temple the moment he had returned and knelt there for a long time. Alas, Dusong Mangpoj would find it very difficult to fulfill his wish. Walala. Chapter 842. Dalen Trinling raised his head and saw a royal capital guard extending his arm. Perched on this arm was a muscular and graceful golden-eyed bird of prey, brimming with power. This bird was completely different from the birds of the Uzun, the Tang dynasty, and the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates. In the entire continent, there was only one place that produced such birds. This was an Arabian hunting falcon. In a flash, all the officials in the hall paled. Prime Minister, the Arabs of the West have sent a letter. The tall royal capital guard strode in with the bird in his hands, but before he could finish speaking, he saw Prime Minister Dalen Trinling raise his wrist. A finger-thick bolt of stellar energy shot out of his finger, pulverizing the Arabian hunting falcon along with the letter on its ankle. All its flesh and feathers were reduced to a mist of blood and dust. The guards of the capital stood dumbfounded in front of the gate, their faces filled with shock, and for a moment, they couldn't say a word. "I understand. You can withdraw." Dalen Trinling waved his hand and indifferently said. As he spoke, he withdrew his finger back into his sleeve. Not a single one of the officials in the hall felt that Dalen Trinling's actions had been excessive. Long before the Tang dynasty had penetrated deep into the western regions, the Uzun and the Arabian Empire had clashed many times over the territory of the western regions. Both sides had suffered grievous casualties, each with victories and defeats, and this state of affairs had persisted for more than 1,000 years. Although the two sides would occasionally cooperate, they were mostly competitors. They could be described as mortal enemies of the western regions. Not too long ago, the Arabian Empire had used the War of the Southwest and the defeat of the Ngari royal lineage to attack the Uzun Empire in Sindh, seizing away all the recipes and results of the giant army. The only bit of cooperation between the two sides had been completely shattered. In the current Uzun Empire, the Arabian Empire was a taboo. When the royal capital guard saw that the speaker was Dalen Trinling, a hint of fear flashed through his eyes. He bowed and quickly left. "All right, let's not talk about this for now. Zhenju, I asked you to solve the sheep plague last time. How is it going?" Dalen Trinling said. "Prime Minister, according to your instructions, we successfully followed the map and found the formula to cure the sheep plague from a teacher in Longxi. The scout has successfully brought back the formula." "Your Highness," one of the Uzun ministers said. "Very good. Compared to the war in the north, this matter is the most important. Let's solve the sheep plague as soon as possible." Dalen Trinling indifferently said. "Prime Minister." The cold wind whistled as it blew down from the sky, sweeping up a snowy mist. More than 2,000 kilometers away from the capital, in a place where few people tread, a huge mountain stood tall. This mountain range stretched on for hundreds of kilometers, and it was as if it had been chiseled by a knife and chiseled by a hatchet. It stretched all the way up, and the highest peak was several thousand meters tall, piercing straight into the depths of the sky. The highest part of the mountain was covered in pure white snow. From a distance, the entire mountain range seemed majestic and awe-inspiring. This was the holy land of the Uzun, the Great Snow Mountain Temple, the source of all the legends of the Uzun. Although the Uzun Empire was still far from entering the winter season, the peak of the Great Snow Mountain was covered in snow all year round, regardless of whether it was spring, summer, autumn, or winter. This was a phenomenon unique to the entire Great Snow Mountain. At this moment, a figure 7 feet tall was kneeling at the base of the mountain, his head pressed to the ground, his body motionless. His armor was in tatters, and many parts of his body were stained black and red with blood. It was clear that he had experienced a hair-raising and perilous battle. This figure had appeared here a month ago, and no matter how the wind blew, how the sun shone, or how the rain drenched him, he had remained unshaken, like the most pious and lowly of believers. If one did not know, they would find it very difficult to believe that this disheveled and filthy figure dressed in tattered armor was the illustrious Imperial Great General Dusong Mangpoj of the Uzun Empire. "Milord, you should leave. The venerable monk will not agree to your request. The Great Snow Mountain Temple has never interfered in secular wars for several thousand years, and it is even less likely to do so now." After some time, a voice rang out in front of Dusong Mangpoj. A bare-footed, bare-headed monk dressed in a single robe walked down from above, his hands pressed together in prayer. Even someone of Dusong Mangpoj's cultivation had failed to hear his footsteps. His eyes were gentle and calm like a bottomless lake, capable of soothing all the distracting thoughts in one's mind. "This matter is different. This is not a secular war. The people who defeated me are all experts of the Central Plains. Only the people of the Great Snow Mountain Temple can deal with these people. I hope that Venerable can inform the Venerable monk and assist me. Dusong Mengpoj continued to kneel on the ground, his head even lower as he respectfully spoke. Oh! The monk's calm eyes finally rippled for a moment, but they quickly regained their composure. It's useless. The Venerable monk will not easily make an exception. My lord, please return. No matter how long you kneel here, it's useless. With these words, the monk quickly turned around and began to make his way up the mountain. In just a few moments, he had vanished from sight. Dusong Mengpoj found it difficult to conceal the fear in his eyes, but even so, he showed no intention of leaving. He continued to kneel on the ground as if he had been petrified. Time slowly passed, the sun rising and the moon setting, day after day. After some time, he heard another set of footsteps. Venerable, don't try to persuade me. I will not leave. Dusong Mengpoj said without raising his head. I'm no venerable, but I truly have come to persuade you to leave. A vigorous and energetic voice resounded in Dusong Mengpoj's ears, causing him to raise his head in shock. He saw an imperial great general wearing fiery red armor and a long saber at his waist, standing in front of him like a god. His body was exuding wave after wave of powerful energy, a storm that was suffocating. Huoshu Wuzong? Dusong Mengpoj was flabbergasted. He had never imagined that a great general of the Ngari royal lineage would appear here. It's useless. The great snow mountain temple will not act. If you want to kneel until the venerable monk appears, not even I can help you. But if you just want to deal with that Wang Chong of the Tang dynasty, I might know of a method that can help you. Huoshu Wuzong looked at Dusong Mengpoj and said, That's right. I forgot to tell you that the young Marquis of Wushang has already been promoted to Qixi Protector General, replacing Fomin Linta. What? Dusong Mengpoj's body trembled, a look of shock on his face. Do you understand now? When he only had 5,000 soldiers, he was already able to defeat you and Dayan Mengpoj. Now that he's promoted to Qixi Protector General, you can imagine what that will mean for our Uzan Empire. Based on what I know, he's still building more cities in the Triangular Gap. In the future, it won't just be us who will lose Qixi and the western regions, the entrance to the Tang dynasty. Moreover, even our own territory will be invaded by the Tang dynasty. Huoshu Wuzong indifferently said. Dusong Mengpoj had arrived a month ago, so he had no idea what was going on in the outside world. But Huoshu Wuzong had come prepared, so he was well aware of all that was going to happen. You can choose to continue kneeling here or leave with me to meet someone. Together, we can deal with that young Marquis of the Tang dynasty. Trust me, only that person can help you deal with that Wang Chong. Huoshu Wuzong said. You'll know when the time comes. Dusong Mengpoj said nothing, only raised his head to the majestic mountain range before him. Following Dusong Mengpoj's line of sight, one could see that halfway up the mountain were ancient temples with yellow walls, arranged in picturesque disorder. They were interspersed with each other, forming a ribbon that extended toward the snow-capped summit. And at the very top of the mountain, above all the other temples, stood a small red temple. Although it was as small as a sesame seed from a distance, it exuded a majestic and ancient aura. It was like the center of the universe, cold, transcendent, and divine as it looked down on the world. This was the most ancient and sacred place of the plateau, the true Great Snow Mountain Temple. Ha! Dusong Mengpoj gave a deep sigh and finally stood up. Perhaps it was just as that Grandmaster had said. The Holy Land had always been aloof from the world, never involving itself in the affairs of the mundane world. No matter how long he knelt here, the Holy Land would not move. Compared to the vague hope of moving against the Holy Land, it was more practical to rely on Huoshu Wuzong, who was also a great general. Let's go! Dusong Mengpoj finally turned his head to Huoshu Wuzong. At that moment, a rare smile appeared on Huoshu Wuzong's lips. You won't regret it. Turning around, the two of them walked out side by side. But as the two left the base of the mountain and passed by an ancient tree that had grown for more than 1,000 years, a calm and lofty voice came from behind them. Great General! The voice rumbled like thunder. This is what the Venerable Master wanted me to give to you. Bizizi. The two turned their heads, and under the flabbergasted gazes of the crowd, they saw a black dot grow larger as it was thrown down from the highest point of the great snow mountain temple. It landed with a thump on the ground not far from the pair. Looking closely, one could see that it was a wooden box about a foot long, wrapped in a yellowish-brown cloth that was trembling in the wind. The Holy Land will not move, nor will it kill, and the Venerable Master will not leave the divine temple for your sake. But even so, the Holy Land is not incapable of helping you. This box contains a ritual tool of the divine temple. As long as you use it, no matter how powerful your opponent is, they will be trapped inside, unable to move. Take it. This should be able to help you. The lingering sound lingered in the air. This time, not just Dusong Mangpoj, but even Huishu Wuzong was pleasantly surprised. The ritual tools of the divine temple had always been rumored to exist, never seen. Huishu Wuzong had come to the divine temple many times and cultivated here for so long, but he had never seen one. He had not expected that Dusong Mangpoj's month of kneeling had moved the divine temple to grant him a ritual tool. Many thanks, Venerable Master. Dusong Mangpoj was overjoyed. Picking up the box, the two quickly left. Chapter 843. As Dusong Mangpoj and Huishu Wuzong left the great snow mountain temple, in the distant city of steel of Wushang, a completely different scene was taking place. As the news that Wang Chong had been promoted to Qixi Protector General spread, the entire city of steel was in a jubilant mood. Their lord had become Protector General, squeezing his way into the ranks of the most powerful and influential personages. What news could be more inspiring than this? To reach this position in a little more than a year was like the morning sun bursting forth from the horizon. If one followed such a lord, their future prospects would be limitless. Everyone seemed to have been injected with adrenaline, madly cultivating and training to raise their strength. The entire city of steel was brimming with energy and vigor. But unlike the atmosphere outside, the situation in Wang Chong's residence was completely different. All the tables, chairs, and stools in this spacious room had been moved away, and in the very center of the room was a massive sand table of the western regions. The sand table depicted the rise and fall of the mountains and all the kingdoms of the western regions, the Tang dynasty's Anxi Protectorate, the Uzun Plateau to the west, the Turkic steppe to the east, Qixi, and Wushang all appeared on the table. While dealing with the Uzun Empire and the Western Turkic Khaganate, Wang Chong had not been idle when it came to other aspects of the western regions. A large number of scouts were sent out to collect information about various regions and forces, as well as the geographical terrain. Hundreds of the most elite scouts in the army spent several months to condense this huge western region sand table, which was of great strategic value. As for the Uzun Empire, I've already killed Dian Mangpoj, Dusong Mangpoj has been injured, and the White Braves are basically gone. In addition, nearly 100,000 of their elite soldiers have died in battle. Coupled with the plague that we spread in the southwest, the Uzun Empire has been greatly weakened and won't have the strength to threaten us for the time being. In addition, the Western Turkic Khaganate has attacked us the most frequently, and their most representative is the Black Wolf Yabgu Agudulan. Agudulan had died by the side of the Qixi armory, and more than 4,000 of his elite Turkic soldiers had been buried with him. With these people dead, the biggest threat to us will be gone. It would be very difficult for the Western Turkic Khaganate to produce another person as formidable and difficult to deal with as Agudulan. Now that these two important figures are dead, Qixi has basically nothing to worry about. Wang Chong extended a finger and pointed at the Uzun Empire and Western Turkic Khaganate on the model. Gathered around him were all the generals of the City of Steel, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Su Yiqin, Su Qi, Cheng Sanyuan, Su Shixian, Chen Bin, and even Zhang Shouji. All of them were focused on Wang Chong's explanation. So my lord means that where should our next target be? Su Kui suddenly said. Should we penetrate into the Uzun Empire and the Turkic steppe and launch a counterattack so that they lose the ability to attack the Tang dynasty? Everyone's eyes brightened at Su Kui's words. Of all the protector generals and great generals of the Tang dynasty, no one had been more proactive than Wang Chong. All the famed generals of the Tang dynasty, including Geshu Han and Sishun, Zhang Shogue, and Fomenlinta had adopted a passive strategy of defense, occasionally taking the initiative to attack. Very few of them were like Wang Chong, penetrating deep into the heart of the enemy and fighting there, establishing bases and cities so that they could remain there forever. This made the enemy feel like a fishbone was stuck in their throats and a dagger was placed on their backs. In this aspect, not even Gao Xianji could compare to Wang Chong. The Uzun Empire and the Turkic Khaganate naturally have to be dealt with, but the greatest threat to us is not them, but somewhere else. Wang Chong drew back his finger and swept his gaze over the crowd. Ah! The crowd was flabbergasted by Wang Chong's words, glancing at each other in dismay. The greatest threats around Wushang and Qixi were the Uzun Empire and the Turkic Khaganate. They truly could not think of any other threat besides these two empires. "Milord, are you talking about the Hu of the Qixi Protectorate?" At the very back of the crowd, Chen Bin seemed to suddenly think of something and hesitantly asked. "Of course not. They don't have the right." Wang Chong grinned and did not keep them in suspense. Taking a small red flag from the side of the model, he sent it over Wushang, Qixi, Anxi, and the Tsong Mountains, finally landing on the farthest point on the western border, near the sea. "Our true enemy is here. Inside. The Arabian Empire. How could it be them? That's just a country the size of a sesame seed. What threat could it possibly pose to us? That's right. They probably can't even compare to Mengshi Zhao, so how could they possibly be stronger than Uzun? And don't we still have the Anxi Protectorate Army and Gao Xianji on the other side of Anxi? With them there, what country could possibly threaten us?" "Marquis, did you point to the wrong place? I've seen those Arabs in the capital before. All of them are plump and round, and when they smile, their eyelids go up so that you can't even see their eyes. Even if there were 80,000 of them, we would still be able to easily defeat them. How could they possibly threaten us?" As Wang Chong placed his red flag down, everyone in the room was flabbergasted. No one had expected that the threat Wang Chong was referring to was this place that was so distant from the Tang dynasty. Many of them began to wonder if Wang Chong had placed his flag in the wrong place. As Wang Chong listened to the cries of alarm in the room, he said nothing, only faintly smiled. When he had first arrived in Wushang, everyone had believed that his goal was to establish a commercial city and earn a great deal of gold and silver, or perhaps to push back the forces of Uzun and the Western Turkic Khaganate. But Wang Chong's goal had never been the Uzun Empire, much less the Western Turkic Khaganate. At this point, Wang Chong no longer needed to hide anything. From start to finish, he had only had one enemy, that vast empire to the west of the Tsong Mountains. Arabia. It was the only existence on this continent that could stand up to the Tang dynasty and was still actively expanding and expanding. Everyone believed that the Arabian Empire was a small country on the same level as Goguryeo or Mengshi Zhao, but Wang Chong knew that the true Arabia had even more territory and more population than the Tang dynasty. Moreover, it ruled over many small countries and had countless famous generals. Moreover, unlike the Tang dynasty, which was currently indulging in peace and pleasure, Arabia was an empire that worshipped courage and battle. Their history was one of constant war and expansion. The Tang dynasty had far too little understanding of the countries outside the Central Plains. The people of the Central Plains had always longed for their homeland and were unwilling to even glance at the outside world. Su Kui, Cheng Sanyuan, and the others had been with him for a very long time, but even they viewed Arabia with such contempt and disdain, let alone the others. While everyone was focused on Uzun and the Eastern and Western Turks, none of them knew that this puny little country was already preparing its troops and targeting the Tang dynasty. Moreover, if they were allowed to succeed, they would completely change the fate of the Central Divine Prefecture, plunging this enormous empire into endless internal strife. This was something that Wang Chong could not tolerate. What Wang Chong needed to do was strike a vicious blow at the empire on the western border when it stretched out its claws, making it feel the power of the empire of the east. Zhang Ke, show everyone the intelligence report Yang Hongchang has gathered. Wang Chong indifferently said to the people in the room. "Yes, Marquis." A young voice spoke from behind Wang Chong. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Ke strode over with a thick stack of documents and began to distribute them to everyone. Everyone was bewildered and subconsciously took the documents. "Open them and take a look," Wang Chong indifferently said, offering no explanation. Everyone was puzzled and subconsciously flipped it open. At first glance, everyone's pupils shrank, and the original noise instantly disappeared without a trace. As time passed, the mood in the room slowly grew heavy. Arabia? How could this be? How could they have such a vast territory, comparable to the Tang dynasty? How could they have so many people? Aren't they just a small country? And they have so many soldiers. How could this be? How could there be such a massive country to the west of the Tsong Mountains? Too powerful. They even defeated the Uzun Empire many times, using a small number of soldiers to suppress the Uzun Empire's strongest Yarlung royal lineage. Everyone in the room was stunned by the information Zhang Ke had handed over. This was a completely different Arabia from what they had imagined, and none of them could believe their eyes as they stared at the Arabia in the report. They finally understood why Wang Chong had said that the greatest threat to the Tang dynasty was the Arabian Empire. All of you have only seen the most superficial information. The true Arabia is far more powerful than what is recorded in the documents. Wang Chong indifferently said to the crowd. With just one sentence, all the voices in the hall immediately disappeared without a trace. Everyone turned to Wang Chong. "Zhang Ke, you can speak next." Wang Chong did not continue, instead shooting a glance at Zhang Quebec. "Yes, Marquis." Zhang Ke bowed and quickly turned to face the crowd. This information was first gathered by Marquis from a great clan in the western regions that he was working with. That clan had been doing business in Arabia for many years and had some understanding of the region. However, the Arabs are very wary of outsiders, making it very difficult for us to gather the most comprehensive information. It was already quite difficult to gather this information, and we even lost quite a few scouts. The true Arabian Empire can only be stronger than what we know. In addition, not too long ago, I was ordered to follow a group of merchants to Arabia, but I didn't get very far before the Arabs discovered Little Shah. The birds raised by the army are extremely formidable, and even Little Shah was injured. They even sent cavalry to pursue me, forcing me to retreat. As Zhang Ke spoke, he raised his arm, bringing the rock eagle on his shoulder before everyone's eyes. In that moment, everyone could clearly see that the rock eagle's legs, head, and body were covered in deep claw marks, some of which were so deep that bone could be seen. All of them couldn't help but take in a deep breath. They had all seen how powerful Zhang Ke's rock eagle was. In all of Qixi, perhaps even in the western regions, there were no birds that could compare to it. Even the birds raised by Uzun and the Western Turks had been forced to flee in panic. It could be said that this rock eagle was the king of eagles. Chapter 844. Could the Arabs really be this formidable? Cheng Sanyuan muttered to himself in shock. The true Arabs are even more formidable than what you see. At this moment, Wang Chong finally spoke. On the Arabian side of Anxi, there is a place called Samarkand. 200,000 Arab soldiers have gathered there, all of them the most formidable cavalry. You should have seen the war horses of Uzun and the Turks. The Arab war horses are taller, more muscular, more capable of charging and more powerful. Not only that, although the majority of the Arab merchants you've seen are chubby and lacking in fighting ability, the true Arabs, because of their environment, are tall and muscular. They are natural-born warriors. Thus, if a war breaks out, the Arabs can gather a massive army from the common people without any training, rapidly expanding to more than 400,000 soldiers, all of them comparable to regular armies. But this is only the army on the far eastern side of the Arabian Empire, not the entirety of the empire. Once all of them are mobilized, the number of soldiers the Arabs can muster is unimaginable. The room was quiet as everyone listened to Wang Chong's words in shock. This was their first time truly encountering the Arabian Empire, and at this moment, all of them felt an intense sense of danger. But you were right about one thing. At the beginning, the Arabian Empire truly was a small country, no larger than the Goguryeo Empire. The reason they were able to develop to such an enormous size, even surpassing the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains, was because they trained their soldiers for many years and fought against foreign invaders, ultimately expanding to their current size. You've all seen Dayan Mangpo's White Braves and know how formidable they are. And the Arabs have a Mamluk army, an army even stronger than Uzun's White Braves. All the soldiers there are trained from the age of 7 or 8. At the very beginning, they kill each other, with only the fiercest and most murderous of children surviving. From childhood to adulthood, they undergo the harshest military training, maturing amidst the blood and swords of actual combat. Finally, they become true soldiers of the Mamluk army. And at that time, every one of them was the most lethal weapon, possessing the most abundant killing and combat experience. Wang Chang's voice echoed throughout the room. For everyone, this was a baptism. This was precisely Wang Chang's goal. If not even the people closest to him could correctly understand Arabia's strength, how could he possibly defeat it? Change happened bit by bit. The Tang dynasty could no longer indulge in the Middle Earth and its surroundings. It needed to truly raise its head and look at the world correctly, to see the true appearance of the world. And this change would begin with the people closest to him. In the future, if every Tang people stopped being obsessed with what was in front of them and were reluctant to leave their homeland and opened their eyes to look at the real world, it would be a completely different Tang dynasty. Marquis, if every Arab is as formidable as you say, how can we fight against them? Can we still defeat them? A voice suddenly interjected. Cheng Sanyuan stared in shock at his marquis. Wang Chang's words today had completely changed his impression of that distant country. Cheng Sanyuan, I've never seen a true Arab warrior, nor do I know what you mean by victory, but the Tang dynasty did not reach its current height through luck. Goguryeo, Mengshi Zhao, Uzun, the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, and the kingdoms of the western regions. Even if all of these countries joined together, they would not dare to recklessly talk about a war with the Tang dynasty. Only the Tang dynasty could use the power of a single country to suppress all the surrounding countries and make them all bow their heads in submission. Arabia might be very strong, but the Tang dynasty is not weak. If the Arabs dare to covet the Central Plains, they will experience the true power of the Tang dynasty for the rest of their lives, and they will never forget it. Li Sai suddenly opened his mouth. His expression was solemn, and his words were powerful and resonant. That's right. A knowing smile appeared on Wang Chang's face at Li Sai's words. Arabia truly is strong, but our Tang dynasty is not weak either. The Arab cavalry is very formidable, but their ballistae and weapons are far inferior to ours. Our Tang dynasty's ballistae are unparalleled in the world. No cavalry, no matter how thick their armor, cannot stop the piercing power of a ballista bolt. Moreover, in terms of infantry formations and fighting power, as well as strategy, the Arabs are far inferior to the Tang dynasty. They do not have formations, only simple formations, much less any strategy. Wang Chong was not exaggerating in the slightest. The military strategies of the Tang dynasty and the Central Plains had been accumulated over a long period of time through frequent confrontations and wars. In this aspect, the Arabs did not possess. Everyone nodded at Wang Chang's words, their spirits roused. Indeed, the Arabs might be a giant crocodile, but the Tang dynasty was no sheep, but a mighty lion. Who was stronger and who was weaker would only be known after the final battle. Marquis, what do you need us to do? No matter what, as long as we can help the Tang dynasty deal with the Arabs, even if we have to climb a mountain of daggers or enter a sea of flames, we will do our best. That's right. Those who offend my Tang dynasty will be executed no matter how far away they are. Marquis, please give us your orders. Everyone excitedly said. In the face of a foreign enemy, all of them were one. Whether they admitted it or not, the glory and responsibility of being part of the Tang people had seeped into their very bones. Wang Chong gave a slight nod of approval at this sight. No matter what the situation was like elsewhere, as long as everyone at his side was of one mind and united as one, Wang Chong was confident that he could accomplish anything. One mountain cannot hold two tigers, and the Arabs are warlike by nature. Given their style, a war with the Tang dynasty is certain to occur in the future. Although we have no way of knowing when the war will begin, we can begin to make preparations. Su Kui. As he spoke, Wang Chong turned his head to the right. Your subordinate is here. Su Kui hurriedly lowered his head and bowed. Starting from now, I need you to shift your focus. Select as many elite scouts from the army as possible, have them learn Arabic, and then send them to the Arabian Empire as quickly as possible. In addition, the Arabs are very xenophobic, so they cannot use us Han. They must recruit Hu or other merchants from the western regions. I need you to use these people to gather as much intelligence on the Arabian Empire as possible. Wang Chong said, Your subordinate understands. Su Kui immediately replied. Chen Bin. Your subordinate is here. Chen Bin stepped forward. The cement road formula is ready. I need you to contact Zhao Jingdian in the capital and have him mobilize the strength of the great clans to build a cement road from Wushang to the Anxi Protectorate as quickly as possible. In addition, inform Zhao Jingdian that I need him to build a cement road as quickly as possible to connect Wushang to the capital. Wang Chong sternly said. Chen Bin quickly bowed. Su Shixian. Your subordinate is here. Su Shixian hurriedly stepped forward. As the new Qixi Protector General and Lord of Wushang, write a memorial to the Imperial Court. Ask the Imperial Court to reinforce Qixi. Say that Qixi suffered grievous losses in the last war. In addition, ask the Imperial Court to use Wushang's City of Steel as a transit point for soldiers. Say that we can take some of the logistical pressure on the Imperial Court. Wang Chong said, a look of awe on his face. He had been thinking about this problem for a very long time. In order to reinforce the Anxi Protectorate army, Qixi alone was not enough. The Imperial Court also had to obtain soldiers from other places. If the City of Steel could be used as a reservoir of soldiers, the number of soldiers that could be deployed would be greatly increased. And the Imperial Court would be happy to have someone else share the logistical pressure and lessen its burden. Thus, your subordinate understands. Su Shixian bowed. In addition, send a letter to the capital and have one Shu Yang come. Yes. Wang Chong issued one order after another, and soon each of them had their own mission. The resources and abilities of the City of Steel were slowly being directed toward Talas and the Arabian Empire. If one said that Yang Hongchang had been the one to gather information on Talas, then now, with the influx of scouts and soldiers, Wang Chong's ability to gather information on Talas and the Arabian Empire had skyrocketed. That's right, what about Huleg? Once everything was over, Wang Chong suddenly thought of Huleg and asked. In the past, Huleg would always be at his beck and call like a shadow, but it had been a very long time since Wang Chong had seen him. Didn't you leave the matter of the Turkic fourth prince to him? Right now, he's completely devoted to this task. In order to better accomplish this task, he's already moved from the residence you arranged for him to the City of Steel's prison. Su Yiqin gracefully strode forward, a charming smile on her face and a spirited expression. She exuded a dazzling charm that even Wang Chong couldn't help but be dazed for a moment, but Wang Chong quickly recovered. The prison? Why would he go there? Wang Chong couldn't help but ask in surprise. Based on his understanding of Huleg, he knew that this fellow was an extreme hedonist. He had been very picky about the rooms that had been arranged for him, and he had even bought a lot of tiger pelts to decorate the walls and floor. How could he possibly be willing to go to the prison? This was completely out of line with his style. Just what is he doing? What can he do? It's all for the fourth prince. Su Yiqin laughed even harder at these words, almost unable to restrain her laughter. Now, in order to win the trust of the fourth prince and change his impression of him, he's actually resorted to the tactic of injuring himself to gain the trust of the fourth prince. He had Su Kui find someone to give him a vicious beating him black and blue, and then throwing him into the prison to be locked up with the fourth prince every day. If my guess is right, this damned fatty is probably complaining to that fourth prince in the prison. Chapter 845. What? Wang Chong was dumbfounded, not daring to believe his ears. Huleg's actions were simply too shocking. Not even Wang Chong had expected him to use this sort of move. But will this move of his really be useful? Huleeg's residence had been personally raided by the fourth prince, and before the Battle of Chishi Armory, this fourth prince had followed the Blue Wolf Protector General Agudulan for a long time, listening to the latter's orders every day. His impression of Huleeg was definitely not very good. In normal circumstances, it would already be quite good if he hadn't lunged at this traitor and taken a bite out of Huleeg. It was almost impossible for Huleeg to change his impression of him. Why else would he use the ruse of self-injury? Su Kui was really beating him, not holding back at all. As for Huleeg, he was lying on the ground, his face ashen and his forehead drenched in sweat as he begged Su Kui to beat him even harder. I have to say that this Turkic horse merchant truly does have some ability. The Turkic fourth prince was imprisoned with him for several days. Every day, the Turkic fourth prince would hear the Turkic fourth prince ramble on about how he was only doing business with us. Moreover, in order to save him, the Turkic fourth prince had been ruthlessly beaten. Su Yichin covered her mouth with a smile. If that's really the case, then this fellow is truly worthy of respect. It seems like he's going all out to return to the Turkic steppe. As he listened to Su Yichin's bell-like laughter, a hint of a smile appeared in Wang Chong's eyes. Forget it. Let him handle this matter. At the same time, on the distant Mount Sanmi, where the tent of the Western Turkic Khaganate was located, a furious roar shook the heavens. What? They actually refused us again. Did they really think that our Western Turks would agree to such an impossible condition? Ishbara Khagan paced back and forth in the enormous golden tent like an enraged lion. All of Mount Sanmi trembled at his roars. Khagan, we've already asked again and again, but the other party insists on 500,000 of the best Turkic warhorses and refuses to relent. He also said that if we don't agree, he'll send the fourth prince's corpse to Mount Sanmi. In the tent, a scout knelt on the ground, trembling with fear. His head was almost buried between his thighs, and he didn't even dare to raise his head to take a look. Bastard! Then let them deliver the fourth prince's corpse. Tell them that 500,000 of the best Turkic warhorses is impossible. Ishbara Khagan was furious. His furious voice was like a clap of thunder that flashed through the sky above Mount Sanmi, causing the minds of everyone who heard it to tremble in fear. The scout prostrated on the ground, not daring to say a word. Hurry up and go. Ishbara Khan's eyes widened as he shouted angrily. Yes. Trembling all over, the scout turned and left, not daring to say another word. However, just as the scout reached the exit of the tent, boom, the earth shook and black gas filled the air. An invisible black wall suddenly descended from the sky, enveloping the entire tent. The Turkic scout was caught off guard and slammed into the black wall of energy, his body staggering and almost falling to the ground. Paying respects to Lord Priest. But this had happened so suddenly that the Turkic scout did not immediately stand up. Instead, he prostrated on the ground, his head even lower in panic. In the tent, the furious Ishbara Khagan inhaled sharply the moment the black wall appeared. His expression became much more sober. The entire tent was silent. Blackwater Shaman. Ishbara Khagan suddenly called out as he glanced outside the tent. Khagan, quell your anger. The matter of the fourth prince must be considered at length. Do not let your emotions affect your decisions. At the exit of the tent, light and shadow changed. With a hoarse and old voice, a figure about 5 feet tall with a hunched back slowly walked in from outside the tent. His black robe reached the ground, and he was holding a black skull staff. At that moment, shadows began to flicker in the tent, with the black-robed figure at the center. Countless savage images of beasts surged out of the black-robed figure's body like streams of light. Not only that, the moment the black-robed figure appeared, the golden tent began to emit a strange odor. It smelled like a bear, but also like a tiger. In short, it felt like a herd of animals had surged into the tent. In the entire Western Turkic Khaganate, there was only one special existence that could give off this sort of feeling and charge into Ishbara Khagan's tent, the shaman priests. No one knew how the shaman priests had come to be, only that they had appeared in the history of the Turkic steppe ever since the birth of the Turkic people, and they possessed an extremely lofty status. The legends said that the shaman priests could communicate with all animals and the gods in the heavens. They knew the past and could also see the future. Their bodies were shrouded in a dense fog, concealing countless secrets. Moreover, all the shaman priests possessed a mysterious power that could not be explained with common sense. This power was not martial arts, but it was even more terrifying and mysterious. The people of the steppe called it sorcery. The most famous legend of the shaman priests was that more than 1,000 years ago, during the reign of the strongest emperor of the Central Plains, Emperor Wu of Han, powerful cavalry from the Central Plains had swept through the steppe and desert, repeatedly driving back the elite cavalry of the Turks. The Turkic steppe had been covered in corpses and rivers of blood. At the height of its power and at its peak, the Turkic Empire had encountered one of the most unyielding emperors of the Central Plains, and after a series of wars, it had rapidly declined and become extremely weak. This was something that had never happened on the steppe before. And in the final battle, Emperor Wu of Han of the Central Plains sent his last powerful cavalry on a northern expedition against the Turks, intending to exterminate the Turks and put an end to any future troubles. At that time, all the people of the steppe were trembling in fear and apprehension, feeling that a great calamity was about to befall them. At that time, the strongest shaman of the Turkic steppe had led several hundred shaman priests on the path the army of the Central Plains had to take in order to cast shaman arts. The strongest army of the other great emperor of the Central Plains had suffered grievous casualties and sicknesses, and they had even begun to fight with the warlocks of the Central Plains. Although the shaman priests had suffered grievous losses, with only a few remaining, they had still succeeded in destroying the most powerful cavalry army in history sent by the great emperor of the Central Plains, saving the Turkic people from extinction. For this reason, all the Turkic Khagans had treated the shaman priests with great respect, and the most respected of all the shaman priests was the branch left behind by that shaman leader. The Blackwater shaman was a branch left behind by that mighty shaman leader. Although 500,000 warhorses are precious, the value of the fourth prince cannot be compared to 500,000 warhorses. He is connected to the fate and future of our Western Turkic Khaganate. Khagan, you've read the oracle, so you should understand this. The Blackwater shaman leaned on his bone staff and slowly walked over. But the Western Turkic Khaganate does not have 500,000 of the best Turkic warhorses. This is an impossible mission. The word, oracle, immediately made Ishbara Khagan much more clear-headed, but he quickly became enraged. The Turks were a people who lived on horseback, and they didn't have much of anything else but war horses. But that also depended on what kind of horse it was. There were as many ordinary war horses as one could want, and there were also millions of good horses. But the Western Turkic Khaganate probably did not have that many of the best and rarest war horses, and even if they did, they would never give them to a Han. Wouldn't that be giving aid to the enemy? After all, the Western Turkic Khaganate was still at war with the Tang dynasty. He could never agree to such a condition. 500,000 of the best Turkic war horses is naturally impossible, but the city of steel cannot be left unnegotiated, and the fourth prince cannot be saved. 500,000 warhorses was just a small trick used by the other party to raise the final price of the transaction. If they really didn't want to negotiate, the fourth prince would already be dead. There would have been no need to refuse Khagan again and again. For the future of the Western Turkic Khaganate, Khagan must remain calm. The Blackwater shaman's lips moved as he slowly spoke. His face was shrouded in a black mist that acted like a veil, making it impossible to see his true appearance. Ishbara Khagan's face froze, and he was momentarily speechless. There was a reason why Ishbara Khagan favored the fourth prince. The steppe was facing an enormous crisis, one that was far more terrifying than any other in history. The first to feel this terror were the shaman priests of the steppe. They could hear the voices of the gods and knew the mysteries of the past and the future. Events of the past had proven the power of the shaman priests countless times. The steppe would one day be destroyed, and that day would not be too far off. This was a prophecy that Ishbara Khagan had heard since he was a child. Very few people on the steppe knew of this secret, and only Ishbara Khagan, as a member of the imperial family, knew of it. From that moment on, he had been deeply uneasy, all the way until the birth of the fourth prince. This child is the hope of the entire Turkic steppe. His existence concerns the future of everyone. When the time comes, he will awaken to his mission and lead the Turks out of that dreadful calamity. The prophecy of the shaman priests regarding this child had been deeply branded into Ishbara Khagan's mind. This was also why he doted on the fourth prince so much. Just as the shaman priest had said, his value was immeasurable. Are we really going to be threatened by a teenage child who still smells of his mother's milk? Ishbara Khagan unwillingly said. As an illustrious sovereign of the steppe, Ishbara Khagan's reputation resounded through the kingdoms of the steppe. Even the protector generals and great generals of the Central Plains had to be wary of him. But now, a teenage boy from the city of Steel was asking for a sky-high price and wantonly threatening him. As the Western Turkic Khagan, how could Ishbara Khagan tolerate this? Chapter 846. Khan, just bear with it for a little longer. Let's see if they'll agree to it or not. If they insist on 500,000 warhorses, then it won't be too late for us to discuss it again. The Blackwater shaman said. For the sake of the high priest, I will endure it for now, but this will definitely be the last time. Ishbara Khagan was furious, but he had no choice but to endure. Let's wait until we send out the emissaries. If they really refuse to let go, it won't be too late for the Khan to take other actions then. The Blackwater shaman nodded. Ishbara Khagan snorted angrily, but said nothing more. Also, I have another matter that I hope the Khan can help me achieve. The Blackwater shaman continued. Oh, what is it? Ishbara Khagan was somewhat surprised. He originally thought that the Blackwater shaman had appeared here because of the matter regarding the fourth prince, but now it seemed that wasn't the case. In the city of Steel of Wushang, the youth who captured the fourth prince, I want to meet him. When the Khagan sends out the emissary, I hope that one of my attendants can accompany him. The Blackwater shaman's voice was faintly discernible and seemed to carry a deeper meaning. Ishbara Khagan's body shook, and he seemed to suddenly understand something. Looking at the Blackwater shaman in front of him, he could not help but reveal an expression of shock. Ouch, 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 it hurts. In the city of Steel's underground prison, Huleeg's cries could be heard over the entire prison. He lay on the ground, naked. The flesh on his plump back was lacerated, and there were even some places where his bones could be faintly seen. It was a ghastly sight. Huleeg, I wronged you this time. I didn't expect them to beat you up like this. Don't worry, if I can go back one day, I will definitely return your property to you. The Turkic fourth prince sat next to Huleeg, his eyes brimming with regret as he gazed at the numerous scars on Huleeg's body. Your Highness, there's no need to blame yourself. It's my honor to serve your Highness. I don't believe that those bastards from Steel City would go back on their word and really kill me. Your Highness, be at ease. Even if I have to put my life on the line, I will definitely save you. Huleeg clenched his teeth, but he only managed to say a few words before the wound on his back stirred, and he couldn't help but gasp in pain. At the sight of this, the fourth prince felt even more guilty. Wang Chong, you bastards! You treacherous bastards! I won't let you off. Fourth prince, if you dare to touch a hair on his head, I, Huleeg, will not let you off even if I become a ghost. Huleeg yelled at the top of his lungs as he cursed outside the cell. Huleeg, don't be like this. They really will kill you. The fourth prince was touched, but he could not bear it. Look at your injuries. You really can't take any more torture. If they come looking for you later, just bear with it, bow your head and admit you were wrong. If you can leave this place, then go find my father and ask him to save me. Wouldn't that be better than both of us dying here? The fourth prince had no idea that at this moment, a group of people outside the cell were inwardly laughing at him. But the Khagan won't believe me. Huleeg laboriously said. It's fine. Take this of mine, and he'll believe you. The fourth prince hesitated for a moment, clenched his teeth, and finally pulled off a black token carved from bone around 3 to 4 inches from his waist. This is my prince's token. As long as you take this token to see my father, he will definitely believe you. This, Your Highness, be at ease. If I have a chance to leave this place, I will definitely save you. I, Hulig, am a man of my word. Even if I die, I will ensure your highness's safety. Hulig seemed to struggle with himself for some time before he clenched his teeth and took the bone token from the Turkic fourth prince's hand. Clang, clang, clang. At this moment, the clanging of metal against metal came from outside the cell. Hulig, you fat Turkic pig who doesn't know what's good for you. Marquis was kind enough to let you go, but you just had to get involved with the fourth prince. I'll give you one more chance. If you continue to speak rudely in front of Marquis, you can die here with the fourth prince. An icy voice came from outside the cell. The door opened, and several fully armored soldiers of the city of Steel strode in. After glancing at Hulig, they immediately picked up the pig-like Hulig and left, leaving the cell with the door slamming shut behind them. Hulig, don't worry about me. Hurry up and admit your wrongs. Protecting yourself is more important. Don't oppose them anymore. In the distance, one could still hear the Turkic fourth prince's worried voice as he leaned against the cell door. Ha, Hulig, you're really something. I think that the fourth prince's tears are about to fall. Don't worry about me. Hurry up and admit your wrongs. Ha, did any of you see how the fourth prince looked when he said those words? Hulig, you bastard. If the fourth prince knew the truth, he'd skin you alive and eat you alive. Once they were out of the fourth prince's prison, they finally couldn't help but roar with laughter. Hulig had long ago become very familiar with all the guards in this prison, so they had no qualms about joking around. Ha, what's there to be afraid of? A petty man is not a gentleman, and a great man is not venomous. Isn't that what you Han of the Central Plains say? As long as I can take back my property, what does this minor matter matter? And once the fourth prince returns, I'll rise to glory and invite everyone to drink. What does today's matter then? Hulig took a silk robe from a guard and put it on, an unconcerned look on his face. Hulig, you truly are a shameless scoundrel. The guards jeered. Thank you for your praise. Hulig chuckled. That's right, where's Marquis? Still in the Chuyun Hall. Are you going to see Marquis? A guard chuckled and patted Hulig on the shoulder. There's no need. Just help me pass this letter to Marquis. Hulig gave a mysterious smile as he took out a letter from his bosom and handed it over. Under the flabbergasted gazes of the guards, Hulig walked out of the prison alone. He did not return to his residence as usual, nor did he go to Wang Chong's residence. Instead, he made a detour and found a plum blossom tree that had been transplanted here. Mounting a high-quality Turkic warhorse, he quickly passed through the city gate and galloped away. Marquis, Hulig just rode a horse and suddenly left the city of Steel. Not long after he left, a scout rushed into Wang Chong's residence. The city of Steel was still not completely open to the public, and anyone entering or leaving was strictly inspected. Wang Chong was seated in front of a red sandalwood table. When he heard these words, he raised an eyebrow in surprise. Reporting. Before leaving, Hulig left behind a letter that he had Lord Marquis deliver. A few moments later, another guard of the city of Steel strode in. Wang Chong was at first taken aback, but he quickly understood. Bring it here. Wang Chong waved his hand and opened Hulig's letter. With just a glance, Wang Chong immediately smiled, a look of anticipation on his face. I understand. You can leave. There's no need for you to concern yourselves with this matter in the future. Yes, Marquis. The two of them quickly responded and left the room. Hulig, I'll be depending on your performance now. Wang Chong glanced out the window, a smirk on his lips. But in the blink of an eye, the smile faded, and Wang Chong quickly took the next report. This time, however, it did not concern Talas, but Chishi. Gallop. A warhorse galloped across the vast Turkic steppe, stirring up a cloud of dust. A slightly plump figure rode out from Wushang and toward the northwest. After an unknown period of time, a huge mountain range finally appeared in front of Zhangxian. It was as if black clouds were looming over a city, towering into the clouds. I've finally arrived. The sight of Mount Sanmi and the hundreds of elite Turkic cavalry and wolf packs on the mountain caused a delighted smile to appear on Hulig's face. Whether he could rise again and reforge his glory would depend on his performance. Ha! The Kagan's tent, I'm coming! Huleeg's eyes shone as he urged his horse to gallop toward the summit. Who goes there? Stop. Don't attack. It's one of us. I have news of the Kagan's fourth prince. I have a way to save the fourth prince. Let me in. Huleeg yelled as he passed through Mount Sanmi and into the tent of the Western Turkic Kagan Ishbara. Ha! Time slowly passed, and everything proceeded according to Wang Chong's plans. Within the city of steel, the sounds of soldiers drilling and the clopping of hooves could be heard. On the training ground of the first light of dawn, the 5,000 Wushang cavalry were changing formation after formation, sometimes gathering and sometimes dispersing. They were extremely practiced, and their killing intent soared into the heavens, inspiring awe and fear in those who saw them. Not bad, it's about ready. Wang Chong nodded in satisfaction as he looked through the window. At the start, when the Wushang cavalry had entered the city of steel, everyone had curiously gathered around the training ground to watch, but now that there was no one around the training ground, no one dared to approach. The Wushang cavalry were getting stronger and stronger, and they were getting more and more like that invincible force that reigned supreme in the world. Bring me my battle armor. In addition, have the soldiers prepare to move out. Wang Chong suddenly said. Yes. A guard quickly responded and left. Chapter 847. Gallop, gallop. The moment Wang Chong led his army out of the city of steel, a panicked horseman in the distance hurriedly turned around and began to gallop back toward the Qixi Protectorate. It's not good. Hurry and tell the general that Wushang's Wang Chong is leading his army toward the Qixi Protectorate. The horseman shouted as he galloped. Cree. With the cry of the Hu horseman, the eagle soared into the air and flew toward the northwest. After passing through many spaces, it finally folded its wings and landed in the main hall of the Qixi Protectorate. What? That Wang Chong has come. The news brought back by the eagle was like a boulder crashing into the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, causing a massive uproar. Bastard! He harmed Protector General and still dares to come? Does he really think that we're afraid of him? Gather all our brothers and have them all come to the Protectorate. I'd like to see just what he dares to do to us. Qixi Protector General. So what if the Imperial Court has appointed him? Without the approval of us brothers, he's nothing. The heavens are high and the Emperor is far away. Not even the Imperial Court dares to do anything to us. I'd like to see just what tricks he has up his sleeve. Tell him to scram back to wherever he came from. The hall was seething with rage. The news of Wang Chong's arrival was like poking a hornet's nest, causing all the Hu generals to explode into a frenzy. In the blink of an eye, countless figures had charged out of the hall. A moment later, the entire Hu army of Qixi had been mobilized, tens of thousands of Hu soldiers surging toward the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. Cree. As the eagles soared into the sky, Qixi was in an unprecedented state of turmoil, the air fraught with tension. Marky, look over there. It's the Qixi Protectorate's the eagle. On the road to Qixi, Zhang Ke raised his head and saw several black dots in the distant sky. His words immediately attracted everyone's attention. Marquis, do we need to get rid of them? No need. Wang Chong raised his head to take a look, smiled and waved his hand. Let them be. It's good to let them watch. Give them some time to prepare and deal with it in one go. Wang Chong's voice was flat, but it was filled with great confidence. The matter of Qixi had been delayed for so long, and it was about time to resolve it. Pass down my order, speed up the march. Yes, rumble. Dust billowed into the air as the 5,000 Wushang cavalry sped up. Their movements were orderly, as if they were one person. On the other side, all the Hu cavalry had gathered in front of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, forming a sea of soldiers in front of the Protectorate's main hall. Everyone was silent, and the atmosphere was suffocating. How much further? 5 more miles. All right, get everything ready, we'll give him a few big gifts first. If he doesn't know what's good for him and still dares to come over, then it's not up to us anymore. Yes, General. One by one, the scouts leaped into the air and dashed away. Reporting. Marquis, A large number of barricades have been discovered on the road up ahead. A few moments later, a Wushang scout rushed over and kneeled on the ground. Wang Chang's brows rose as he looked into the distance. Several hundred meters away, he saw thousands of triangular barricades, each 3 to 4 feet tall, covering the road leading to the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. With Wang Chang's eyesight, he could even see at a glance that on the left and right sides of the road in front of the barricades, there was a large tree stump. On it were several large and crooked Chinese characters. "Turn back now. Those who advance will die." These were only 8 words, but they exuded an intense killing intent. "These words are so ugly." Wang Chong grinned and quickly turned his head. "Arrange for a squad to clean up the barricades." "Yes, Marquis." One of the generals quickly responded and left. The position of Qixi Protector General had never been as lucrative as one might imagine. On the contrary, it was fraught with challenges. Just those unruly Hu soldiers were a headache to deal with. Before Wang Chong had even taken up the post, when they were still 10 li from the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, these people were already setting up barricades and dismounting. Their attitude was self-evident. A normal person, or even someone else, would have been helpless against this situation, allowing them to have their way and forcing them to retreat. Alas, they had run into him. Wang Chong had never been someone easy to deal with or dismiss. He had also not intended to use ordinary methods to deal with these resentful Qixi Protectorate soldiers. Hong Long Long, an army quickly split up. War horses galloped, and in just a moment, a cloud of dust was kicked up on the official road. In less than a few breaths of time, all the barricades had been swept away, and a path was made. When cavalry fought, encountering barricades and pitfalls was a common occurrence. In the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong had used countless caltrips to cut off the Mengshi army's path up the mountain. As an outstanding cavalry force and an outstanding commander, Wang Chong had to consider this sort of situation. This sort of situation was completely possible, and if the Wushang cavalry couldn't even deal with this sort of situation, they would be unworthy of their title as the world's #1 cavalry force. Thus, at the very beginning of the construction, Wang Chang's Wushang cavalry had always had this sort of specialized clearing force. After clearing out the barricades, the army continued upward, encountering pitfalls, caltrips, tripping ropes, all sorts of traps, all of which were swiftly cleared away by Wang Chong. To the current Wushang cavalry, these things posed no threat. A few moments later, Wang Chong was only 5 li from the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. This time, there were no more traps. On the broad road, a lone Hu soldier with hawk-like eyes and a deep nose stood in front of the 5,000 Wushang cavalry, apparently having been waiting for a long time. "Wang Chong, General has ordered us to immediately retreat. Don't make a mistake." Upon seeing Wang Chong, the Hu soldier's expression turned cold. He turned his head and harshly bellowed, "It's not too late to turn back. If you cross this line, don't expect us to be impolite." Swish. As the Hu soldier spoke, he raised his halberd horizontally and suddenly bent down. Under the gazes of the crowd, the sharp tip of the halberd drew a long straight line on the ground, splitting the official road in two, creating a clear boundary line. "How dare you? Impudent! Is Marquis's name something you can call?" The soldiers behind Wang Chong were infuriated by this sight. Wang Chong was the son of Heaven's disciple, the young Marquis of the Tang dynasty, and the newly appointed Qixi Protector General. Not even Li Sai and the others would dare to call him by his name. This who was just a lowly soldier, but he actually dared to call Wang Chong by his name. This was truly unbridled and arrogant to the extreme. But before anyone could do anything, there was a flash of bloody light from Nei's warhorse. Boom! The Hu soldier was dumbfounded, and before he could even react, a massive broadsword had cleaved apart the Hu, his warhorse, and the earth. The sword chi did not rest, tearing open a fissure 10 some zhang long in the ground. Disrespecting one's superior and disrespecting Marquis. "How dare you?" Li Sai's eyes chilled, and his icy voice boomed like a peal of thunder, traveling several li away. Even the soldiers of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters could clearly hear it, and they all grimaced. In the light of the first rays of dawn, Li Sai held his saber in front of him. His sturdy and heavy figure was as imposing as a mountain, deeply imprinting itself in everyone's eyes. Bastard! At that moment, the soldiers in front of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters all grimaced. Advance! Wang Chong faintly smiled and waved his sword as he gave the order to advance. If those who of the Qixi Protectorate wanted to use this method to deal with him, they had found the wrong person. If they thought that this could stop him, they were dreaming. The army advanced, encountering no more opponents. A few moments later, Wang Chong finally saw the majestic Qixi Protectorate headquarters, as well as the tens of thousands of Hu soldiers in front of it. These tens of thousands of well-equipped Hu soldiers were divided into ranks, forming a massive gorge between Wang Chong's Wushang army and the hall of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. The army was silent, but an invisible killing intent soared into the heavens. The thousands of Hu soldiers exuded powerful auras, their sharp gazes staring at Wang Chong as if they wanted nothing more than to pulverize Wang Chong's body. In a flash, the air became tense and somber, and Wang Chong's 5,000 Wushang soldiers slowly came to a halt. Bastard! What are these scoundrels doing? At this sight, the soldiers behind Wang Chong paled, their eyes flashing with fury. Wang Chong was the Qixi Protector General of the Imperial Court, a title that the Holy Emperor had personally conferred. For these people to dare to gather their soldiers and resist Wang Chong was tantamount to rebelling against their superiors. How preposterous! Do they really dare to rebel? A hint of rage flashed through Su Kui's eyes as he urged his horse to charge forward. Wait a moment. At this moment, a voice came from behind him. Wang Chong had extended a palm and called out to Su Kui. Come back. Let's see what they want to do first. Wang Chong's expression was indifferent, seemingly unconcerned. He had predicted this scene long ago. He was the one who had pulled Fomin Linta off his horse, and the Hu on the border had never had a good impression of him. He would have been more surprised if he had been able to smoothly assume his post in the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. A feast at Hongmen, interesting. Wang Chong rode forward 2 paces, a faint smile on his lips as he gazed at the vast Hu army. He had never once thought about going back from the City of Steel. No matter how many Hu there were, they would have to yield whether they wanted to or not. Wang Chong! With a peal of thunder, a deep and resonant voice, tinged with the unique trill of the Hu, came from the rear of the army. You're quite bold. After harming our Protector General, you still have the face to appear before us. Do you really think that we don't dare to kill you? I'll give you one chance. It's not too late to retreat now. With this cold and hard voice, the vast army in front of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters parted like a wave. 20 to 30 Hu generals clad in thick armor strode forward, their armor clattering against each other as they seethed with killing intent. At the very front of this group of Hu generals was a tall and muscular Hu general. His eyes were vicious and fierce, brimming with boundless ambition. The tens of thousands of Hu soldiers fused with his aura, making him seem even taller. Good July. Chapter 848. The world was quiet. Whether it was the tens of thousands of Hu soldiers or the 5,000 Wushang cavalry led by Wang Chong, all of them were silent. But the atmosphere between the 2 armies was only getting more and more tense. Li Sai, Su Kui, Cheng Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the others all had angry expressions on their faces at Dou Li's words, but no one said a word. All of them were looking in the same direction, at a single person. Good July. A voice suddenly rang out in front of the 2 armies. Wang Chong stroked the reins of his horse, a faint smile on his face as he slowly rode out of the army. He examined the Hu generals lined up 50-some zhang away, an amused look in his eyes. Defying a military order, defying a holy decree, you should know the result. Dismiss the army, put down your weapons, kneel, and beg for mercy, and I can spare your life. Otherwise kill. Edict. Bastard. Impudent. Foul brat, who do you think you are? You have no right to speak here. Before Gujulai could say anything, the other Hu generals immediately began to curse. Gujulai couldn't help but smirk at this sight. In this period of time, He had complete control over the Qixi Protectorate. Without his orders, even if Wang Chong obtained the decree of the Holy Emperor and became Qixi Protector General, it would still be useless. Enough! Gujulai extended an arm to stop them. He slightly raised his head and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Wang Chong on horseback. Brat, you're too arrogant. You're not even Qixi Protector General yet, but you're already giving orders. Let me tell you, in Qixi, only one person's words are useful. In the past, it was Lord Fomen Linta. Lord Fucha Lingcha was pulled down by you, but someone else took his place. But no matter who it is, there's one thing I can be sure of, he is a who, not you. Even if you have the decree of the imperial court, it's useless here. Use it. Gujulai made a gesture at the last two words. Roar. In an instant, following Gujulai's gesture, the 20,000 soldiers roared in unison, letting out an earth-shattering roar. In that instant, all the birds in the mountains flew away, all the people in the paths disappeared, and the entire earth buzzed and trembled amidst this shocking roar. Buzz. Upon seeing this, Su Kui, Su Shixian, Cheng Sanyuan, and Zhang Ke all grimaced. With just this roar, the 20,000 whose soldiers were forged into a steel plate. This scene alone made it extremely difficult for Wang Chong to ascend to the position of Qixi Protector General. Gujulai's control over these whose soldiers was even greater than they had imagined. Marquis, do we need to take action? Li Sai was the only one who remained calm and collected. He looked ahead without any expression. There's no hurry. Wang Chong smiled and stopped Li Sai. No matter what Gudu Li's intentions were, this move of his was meaningless to him. But Wang Chong was in no hurry. He turned his gaze to the other who generals at Gujulai's side. Gujulai plotted a rebellion and committed an unforgivable crime. What about the rest of you? Do you want to go with him? Buzz. Under Wang Chong's gaze, the Hu generals at Gujulai's side felt their hearts clench. A man's name is like a tree's shadow. Although Wang Chong was young, he was an illustrious figure in the western regions, like the sun at high noon. At the Battle of the Triangular Gap, tens of thousands of Uzun soldiers had died in battle. Even a great general like Dusong Mangpoj had been forced to flee, and Dian Mangpoj had even died. Later on, the death of the Black Wolf Yabgu had pushed Wang Chong's reputation to the peak. In Qixi, Wang Chong's reputation was no different from that of the god of death. Although they said that they weren't afraid, they were inwardly very apprehensive. However, when they saw Gudu Li in front of them, their gazes slowly became resolute. Foul brat, don't try to drive a wedge between us. When did we start a rebellion? I advise you to leave as soon as possible. The position of Qixi Protector General isn't so easy to sit on. It looks to me like you're the one plotting a rebellion. If you don't leave now, don't blame us for being merciless. The Hu soldiers angrily glared at Wang Chong, not willing to back down. Haha, do you see? You've wasted your efforts. Gudu Li looked at his opponent with a smug expression. I'll count to 6. If you don't retreat by then, I'll immediately attack and you'll have to bear the consequences. The main force of the Qixi Protectorate was the Hu. If the Qixi Protectorate suffered grievous casualties when he attacked, Wang Chong would immediately be removed from his position as Qixi Protector General. And if Wang Chong didn't fight back, the soldiers he had brought with him would suffer grievous casualties. Whether Wang Chong attacked or not, he was doomed to lose this battle. As long as one could not obtain the recognition of these Hu generals, anyone the imperial court sent would be useless. This was what Gujulai was relying on the most. 1. Gujulai raised a finger, a smug look on his face. 2. 3. Gujulai raised his fingers one by one, brimming with confidence, as if he had already defeated Wang Chong. So what if he was the young Marquis? So what if he was the son of Heaven's disciple? In the Qixi Protectorate, only he, Gujulai, had the final say. There's no need to go to so much trouble. Wang Chong slowly urged his horse forward, a smirk on his face. I can answer you right now. Gujulai, you're already dead. The final word, dead, was like a peal of thunder in everyone's ears. Gujulai's heart skipped a beat and his face paled. But what shocked him the most was Wang Chong's next reaction. From start to finish, Wang Chong had always had a faint smile on his lips, but at this moment, his expression turned cruel and callous. At the same time, he raised his right hand and swung it down. Attack! The cold voice resounded in everyone's ears, and a moment later, the 5,000 Wushang cavalry, who had restrained their auras, suddenly exploded with a storm of energy. In that instant, it was earth-shattering and earth-shattering. This bastard! He really dares! Gujulai's face was ghastly pale, and this was the only thought in his mind. If the 20,000 Hu cavalry of Qixi suffered grievous casualties from internal strife, Wang Chong wouldn't even be able to last through the night and would soon be thrown into prison. It was precisely because he had grasped this point that Gujulai had dared to so brazenly oppose the imperial court. But he had never imagined that Wang Chong would be even more brazen than he was. He hadn't even thought about it before giving the order to attack. When a person lost their greatest support, Guduli's feelings were no different from those of other people. They were flustered and uneasy. Bastard! You'll regret this. This thought flashed through Gujulai's mind, and he immediately issued the only order he could. Attack! Rumble! Warhorses neighed and the 20,000 cavalry howled, their sabers, swords, and halberds aimed at the Wushang cavalry. But the famed and disciplined Qixi cavalry of the western regions were now facing the most frightening foe they had ever encountered. Clang clang clang! A dazzling halo shot out from under the hooves of a Wushang horseman, and then another and another, one after another, shot out from under the feet of the Wushang cavalry with astonishing speed. Charge! The 20,000 Qixi cavalry had barely adjusted their weapons when the 5,000 Wushang cavalry behind Wang Chong had already charged more than 30 zhang away. So fast. At this sight, Gujulai and the Hu generals of the Qixi protectorate were in disarray. They had long ago known that the Wushang cavalry of the City of Steel were formidable, the elite of the elite. But they had not been there at the Battle of the Triangular Gap, nor had they imagined that there would be such terrifying cavalry in the world. From the moment they started to charge, not even a second had passed. While the 20,000 Qixi cavalry were still moving at zero speed, Wang Chong's 5,000 Wushang cavalry had already reached their peak speed. Under the dazzling halos, these powerful Wushang cavalry were like divine soldiers descending from the heavens. Boom! Time seemed to stop at that moment. With a heaven-shaking boom, the 5,000 Wushang cavalry stabbed into the 20,000 Qixi cavalry like a sharp knife. The Ney was thrown into disarray, the soldiers of the Qixi protectorate and their horses like they were made of paper as they were thrown into the air by Wang Chong's Wushang cavalry. Not a single one of the Qixi cavalry was a match for them. Bastard! Kill him! Kill them all! Gujulai's furious voice resounded over the army, his teeth clenched so tightly that they were about to shatter. Wang Chong and his 5,000 Wushang cavalry were too crazy and too impudent. The laws of the imperial court and the laws of the army seemed to have no restraints on them. These bastards were even more arrogant and despotic than he was. Kill. The more you kill, the better. You madman, I'd like to see how you deal with this. At Gudu Li's side, the other Hu generals were also anxious, issuing order after order as tens of thousands of Qixi cavalry charged in from all sides. But these cavalry could not stop the advance of the 5,000 Wushang cavalry. Rumble! Wang Chong's Wushang cavalry charged forward as if they were nothing more than dried twigs. In just a few seconds, they had completely routed the central army that Gujulai had gathered. But in the midst of this fierce battle, not even Gujulai noticed that even though countless Qixi cavalry were being cut down like straw by the Wushang cavalry, the majority of them were only heavily injured, with only a few truly dead. If one looked carefully, one would realize that there was a faint layer of light enveloping all the Wushang cavalry. Rather than saying that the Qixi cavalry had been sent flying by the Wushang cavalry, it was more accurate to say that they had been sent flying by this layer of light. The Iron Wall Formation. Chapter 849. Bang bang bang. Countless sabers, swords, and halberds stabbed at them from all sides, but they were either repelled by the white light on the Wushang cavalry or dodged. Some of the Wushang cavalry even reached out to grab their opponents from their horses and throw them to the ground. In terms of horsemanship, there were very few people who could surpass the Wushang cavalry. Rumble! There was a heaven-shaking boom, and in less than 4 seconds, the Hu army that Gujulai had gathered in front of the Qixi Protectorate's main hall had been pierced through by Wang Chong. These Qixi cavalry had all been trained by Fomin Linta through the strictest methods, and they had all experienced the fires of war. In the view of Gujulai and the other Hu generals, the 20,000 Qixi cavalry were Qixi's strongest fortress, more than enough to deal with Wang Chong. But no one had expected that in front of Wang Chong's 5,000 soldiers, it would be like paper, instantly pierced through. Wang Chong had used absolute strength to crush the tens of thousands of Qixi cavalry. Nay! War horses whinnied and men were thrown off their mounts. This massive contrast between before and after instantly threw the 20,000 Qixi soldiers into panic. Damn it! Get out of the way! Those Han brats are coming! How could there be such a thing? Too terrifying! Get out of the way! Wang Chong's 5,000 Wushang cavalry had emerged victorious, giving everyone an unprecedented shock, from the mind to the body. For the first time, the Hu army that had believed themselves to be invincible in Qixi had been struck by an earthquake. The army had been routed like a landslide. With just a single charge, Wang Chong had cleanly pierced through the center of the Hu army that Guduli had gathered, and the 20,000-strong Hu army was instantly routed. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Gujulai's eyes went red at this sight. Don't be afraid. Kill them. Swarm them. Rush up and kill them all. Gudu was exhausted and hysterical. He let out a string of sounds from his mouth, and his entire person was in chaos. In Qixi, the strongest fighting force was the Hu in the army. They had once defeated the Uzan and the Western Turks. This was a true army of steel, an army of 100 battles. Gujulai did not believe that such a mighty army would be defeated so easily. He was still struggling on his deathbed, trying to gather his army and use his advantage in numbers to completely defeat Wang Chong and his Wushang Iron Cavalry. However, at this time, Gujulai heard a wave of hurried hooves through the thousands of chaotic sounds. A powerful aura, like a surging wave, passed through the army and charged in his direction. Without any warning, a strong sense of danger suddenly enveloped his body. Gujulai's heart trembled, and without the slightest hesitation, he pulled out his sword. However, Guduli's reaction was still too slow. Just as he pulled out his sword, Hong, a cold light flickered, and a huge blood-red horse soared into the sky. On the horse, a figure that was as tall as a mountain range became one with the horse, brandishing a huge sword that was as tall as a person, and fiercely slashed down. At that moment, even the sunlight in the sky was blocked. The huge sword in that person's hand shone brightly like a blazing flame, bringing with it an unparalleled aura as it heavily slashed down towards Guduli. Boom! There was an earth-shattering boom, and in the blink of an eye, Guduli only had time to gather all the stellar energy in his body and gather it into the long sword in his hand. He raised the sword and scabbard high to block the attack, and then everything went silent. Even the sounds of fighting on the battlefield became much quieter. Time and space seemed to have come to a standstill as countless gazes gathered from all directions. Some of them were shocked, some were confused, and some were in disbelief. In the center of the battlefield, the invincible General Li Sai rode on a tall Fergana steed with a cold expression. The huge broad-backed Wuzi steel sword in his hand was pointed downward. At the tip of the sword, the most powerful rebel general in the entire Qixi Protectorate, Gujulai, was kneeling. His hands were raised high, holding the sword that he always carried with him, and his body was motionless. Clang! There was a crisp sound, and the first thing to crack was the well-tempered sword in Gujulai's hand. Then, a line of blood shot out from the center of his forehead, like an invisible string, and his body was split into two. Gujulai's eyes went round in disbelief, and then, with the line of blood at the center of his forehead as the center, his body was split in two, one on the left and one on the right. Rumble! Dust billowed. Almost at the same time that Guduli collapsed, a beam of sword chi shot up into the sky from the ground, plowing a 6 to 7 meter long crack in the ground behind Guduli. Only now did the sword chi that Li Sai had sent into the ground begin to explode. Those who dare to mutiny, So be it. Li Sai sat on his horse, his sword pointed at Gujulai's remains. His body exuded waves of icy killing intent, his callous voice echoing over the entire Chishi protectorate. Bang! At the start, when the 5,000 Chishi soldiers had pierced through the center of the Chishi army of 20,000, there had still been some who were unwilling to give up and still fiercely fighting for the morale of Gujulai's army. Thus, when Guduli, whom they viewed as the leader of the Hu, fell, the last bit of faith in the hearts of the Hu cavalry crumbled. Kneel and surrender, or else die. Wang Chang's voice rang out over their heads, callous and emotionless. With Wang Chang's voice, the Chishi cavalry put down their weapons and fearfully kneeled on the ground. At first, it was one or two, but soon, a vast sea of them began to kneel. Guduli was dead, and the cavalry of the City of Steel were so powerful that they felt like they were no match for them, as if they could rival them with human strength. What are you doing? Have you forgotten who killed the Protector General? Bastard! He's a Han. Get up, all of you, get up. The Hu generals were infuriated by this sight, and they began to curse in rage. But with two thuds, the swords pierced through the bodies of the two Hu generals. Treacherous officials and traitors, truly deserving of death. Huang Batian stood over the corpse of a Hu general, a look of disdain on his face as he slowly pulled out his sword. Huang Batian had come from Wushang village, and his thoughts were pure and not as complicated. These people had dared to defy their superiors, and Huang Batian had long ago found them displeasing to the eye. If not for Wang Chang's orders, these fellows would have been dead long ago. Bastard! Wang Chong, you're dead. I don't believe that you would dare to kill all of us. Another Hu general angrily roared, but before he could finish, a spear had run through his throat and nailed him to the ground. Up until the moment of his death, his eyes were still wide open. He didn't even think before he actually killed them. This bastard! Isn't he afraid of the imperial court investigating? This was the last thought in his mind. With these people dead, the Hu generals instantly crumbled, fleeing like birds and beasts. They no longer had the resolve to fight against Wang Chong. It was only at this moment that they realized that they had greatly underestimated this Han youth. His methods were thunderous, ruthless, decisive, and iron-blooded. Everyone's confidence and the methods they had prepared beforehand were completely useless against him. One more step forward and you'll die. Wang Chong patted his horse and slowly urged it forward, a faint smile on his lips. His voice was neither loud nor soft, and there was no hint of anger in it. But in the ears of the Hu generals, it was like a clap of thunder. The fleeing Hu generals trembled, all the blood draining from their faces, leaving them ghastly pale. Even though it was empty in front of them and there was no one blocking them, everyone felt as though their feet were nailed to the ground. They couldn't move even half a step. A huge fear swept over them like a tidal wave, completely crushing the last bit of courage in their hearts and scattering it in all directions. Those who dared to rebel against the imperial court were basically the most vicious and ferocious of the Hu. These people had no fear, but Wang Chang's methods had left them deeply fearful. Although this young marquis of the City of Steel had the face of a 17-year-old, in their minds, he was a terrifying demon. Wang Chang's iron-blooded methods had thoroughly shattered their resolve. Gallop! The slow clopping of hooves seemed to trample on the hearts of the Hu horsemen. Hearing this sound, all the Hu cavalry lowered their heads, their hearts filled with fear. They didn't even dare to look at the sound. If they hadn't known what sort of person Wang Chong was before, they now knew that Wang Chong had established himself as a lofty and invincible figure. Kneel! Wang Chong rode his warhorse through the battlefield like he was taking a leisurely stroll. His gaze swept over the battlefield as he spoke these two words. At the edge of the battlefield, the Hu generals who had already fled some distance felt their hearts tremble. With their backs to Wang Chong, they immediately kneeled, not daring to move. As the Hu generals knelt, the rebellion of the Hu generals came to an end. Li Sai, I'll leave the rest to you. Wang Chong paused as he passed by Li Sai. Yes, Marquis. Li Sai nodded. His aura surged, domineering and tyrannical, deeply shocking these Hu generals. Li Sai had come from the ranks, and before he had joined Wang Chong he had already had abundant experience in biting. Although he was not an expert in administrative matters, he would definitely have no problem in reorganizing the army. Wang Chong nodded and continued forward. Chapter 851. On the other side, Li Sai received the order and immediately began to reorganize the army. Speed was of utmost importance in war. Be it in his previous life or now, the invincible great general had always been conscientious and devoted to his duty. And with 5,000 Wushang cavalry armed to the teeth suppressing them, none of the Hu soldiers dared to move. Su Kui, check the casualties of the Hu army. Wang Chong looked around the battlefield and said faintly, "Yes, Marquis." Behind him, Su Kui grunted in acknowledgement and flew off. In terms of administrative matters, Su Kui was undoubtedly an expert. After a short while, Su Kui returned and flew back. "My lord, the Qixi Protectorate has lost a total of 4 Hu generals, 150 Hu cavalrymen, and 8,700 heavily injured, and countless lightly injured." Towards the end, Su Kui's voice slowed down and became much softer. Although they had succeeded in defeating the rebel Hu army of the Qixi Protectorate and subduing them, the price of this battle had been far too high. More than 8,700 people were seriously injured. Su Kui stole a glance at Wang Chong. He was a little worried. If this news were to reach the imperial court, it would be very disadvantageous to Wang Chong. After all, the Qixi Protectorate only had tens of thousands of people. It's only 150 men, that's enough. Su Kui, prepare a memorial and report this matter to the imperial court. Unexpectedly, after hearing Su Kui's words, Wang Chong looked relaxed. He even heaved a sigh of relief, as if he didn't care at all. Wang Chong knew what Su Kui was thinking. He glanced at him and smiled faintly. "Don't worry, nothing will happen. Just do as I say." Wang Chong was born in a family of generals and ministers, so he had a lot of contact with military affairs. Although the Hu of the Qixi Protectorate had suffered many casualties in today's battle, with more than 8,700 heavily wounded, the imperial court would only pay attention to those 150. As for the 8,700 people, no one cared about them at all. In the military, being heavily injured and dying were two completely different concepts. Heavily injured people would recover after a period of time, but the dead would not come back to life. Not even the imperial court or the Holy Emperor would have anything to say about pacifying the chaos in Qixi with only 150 casualties. This was what Wang Chong had planned from the very beginning. "Everyone else, follow me." With a wave of his hand, Wang Chong led the others through the battlefield toward the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. The war was over, and Wang Chong's entire focus was on the huge building in front of him. "I finally see it." Wang Chong gazed at the building in front of him. In truth, he had passed by the Qixi Protectorate headquarters several times, but because of Fomenlinta, Wang Chong had never gotten too close. The closest he had come to this Protector General's hall was the night he had dealt with the Black Wolf Yabgu, but Wang Chong had never gotten so close. Wang Chong carefully examined the massive structure before him. The entire hall was 10 some zhang tall, forged from bronze, refined iron, gold, silver, and deep-sea Xian iron. The hall was majestic and magnificent, both magnificent and dignified. But what Wang Chong was paying attention to was the surface of the hall, the countless sabers, spears, swords, and halberds, as well as the traces of battle. Wang Chong could sense the deep scars of history left behind by the erosion of time. The Qixi Protectorate had not been established recently. If one carefully traced it back to the era of Emperor Taizong, a very long time ago. Fomenlinta was also far from being the first Protector General of the Qixi Protectorate. Before him, this place had been overseen by generation after generation of Protector Generals, each of them renowned on the western border. Each of them had left their own deep imprints on this place. And after a long time, the Qixi Protectorate had welcomed its first Han Protector General. Su Shixian, go get the Qixi Protectorate's roster. Investigate all the servants, maids, and laborers of the Qixi Protectorate. Keep those who can stay, and send away those who can't. In addition, At this point, Wang Chong suddenly paused, a faint smile appearing on his lips. In addition, you can have Su Yiqing come in. With these words, Wang Chong strode into the hall. The floor of the Qixi Protectorate was made entirely of metal, and it was icy cold beneath his feet. But to Wang Chong, it felt very different. Ever since his reincarnation, this was the first time Wang Chong had set foot in the famed Qixi Protectorate of the western border. Wang Chong could sense that every inch of this hall was branded with the deep marks of authority. The tens of thousands of soldiers of Qixi, the nearby Qixi Armory, and the vital road to the Anxi Protectorate of the western regions were all controlled by this hall. In this life, this was the first time Wang Chong had set foot on such a high peak of authority. Tut, tut, tut. Wang Chong's footsteps were calm and unhurried, his footsteps echoing through the hall. Passing through the heavy metal door, Wang Chong finally saw the throne of authority in the center of the hall. Bang! A few moments later, the heavily armored Wang Chong stepped onto the throne, turned around, and sat down on the throne that represented the supreme authority of the Tang dynasty. Rumble! The moment Wang Chong sat down, all of Qixi trembled. Not many people realized that all of Qixi, including the western regions, had changed with Wang Chong's ascension to the throne of Qixi. At this moment, the course of history had begun to lead on a completely different path. I've finally succeeded. Starting now, I will protect the Tang dynasty. Seated on the throne of Qixi Protector General, Wang Chong gripped the armrests, sensing the power and authority that had settled down over the course of history, his mind rumbling with thunder. Qixi Protector General was the highest position of authority in the entire Tang dynasty. At this moment, only Wang Chong knew that he truly possessed the power to change this empire. In all of Qixi, Wang Chong was invincible. Flap flap. Several days after Wang Chong had taken complete control of Qixi, a messenger bird flew over the city. Ha, Wang Chong, this king truly did not misjudge you. I didn't think that you would be able to pacify Qixi so quickly. King Song heartily laughed as he read the letter from Qixi, his heart filled with relief. The king of Song had stood his ground against all opposition and recommended Wang Chong as Qixi Protector General. Only he himself knew just how much pressure he had been under. The imperial court, the holy emperor, and the people were all focused on him. Wang Chong's success or failure in Qixi was not only related to himself, but also to the king of Song in the distant capital. If the king of Song had made the wrong recommendation and Wang Chong had failed to stabilize Qixi, the king of Song's prestige in the court would suffer a massive blow. Even the holy emperor would probably not value him as much in the future. But he hadn't expected that not long after the imperial court had issued the appointment, Wang Chong would be able to cleanly resolve all the unstable elements in Qixi. Moreover, he had only lost 150 Hu soldiers, a price that was almost negligible. Your Highness, it seems that child has completely matured. With him in Qixi, Your Highness will have nothing to worry about. This child truly did not disappoint Your Highness's efforts. The old steward bowed and said, he had also watched Wang Chong grow up. Who could have imagined that this youth of the capital who had needed his assistance in dealing with King Sojurim would now be able to stand on his own and sit on the most influential throne of the empire, completely replacing Fomin Linta. At this moment, even the old steward felt extremely gratified. Write a letter for me to Wang Chong. Tell him to focus on managing Qixi. If he has any requests, he can tell me. I will do my best to support him in the capital. That's right. I remember that not long ago, Wang Chong sent a memorial requesting that the city of Steel be used as a transit point for soldiers. I want to present this to the Holy Emperor. In addition, Qixi has been through a series of major battles. Look after the Bureau of Military Personnel for me and prioritize the supply of soldiers to Qixi. The King of Song said, Your Highness. Time slowly passed, and after killing Gujulai, Wang Chong smoothly ascended to the position of Qixi Protector General. All the voices of resistance had been suppressed by Wang Chong. In addition, all the who had participated in the rebellion had been reorganized by Li Sai, and everything was on the right track. In the main hall of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, A large sand table with talas at the center had been placed on display. Small flags of various colors had been inserted into the sand table. Wang Chong stood next to it, a small red flag in his hand, a pensive look in his eyes. The Hu of Qixi are still unconvinced. A voice suddenly came from behind him. It was Su Kui, dressed in martial attire, a hint of worry on his thick brow. Although we've already completely routed the Hu army of the Qixi Protectorate, killed Gujulai, and generally has reorganized them, these Hu are still outwardly convinced, but their hearts are unconvinced. In the last few nights, there have been many disturbances. Although they've all been minor matters like stabbing horses, brawling, and small-scale destruction of provisions, your subordinate is worried that these Hu aren't very useful. At a critical juncture on the battlefield, there will be major chaos. Even Heba Yi can't be dealt with? Wang Chong indifferently said, not even turning his head. His eyes were still focused on the sand table before him. Heba Yi had arrived after the battle. Unlike the others, he had witnessed the Battle of the Triangular Gap and was well aware of the terrifying fighting power of Wang Chong's 5,000 soldiers. When Gujulai had gathered the Hu generals to rebel, Heba Yi had been the only high-ranking Hu general who had not participated. Unlike the others, when Heba Yi arrived, he had immediately expressed his allegiance to Wang Chong and his respect for the imperial court's decision. Moreover, Wang Chong was well aware that this Qixi commander of the Uzun Plateau was completely different from Gujulai, and that he was loyal and reliable to the Tang dynasty. Thus, Wang Chong had decided to give Heba Yi command of the reorganized Hu army. Chapter 852. General Heba truly did manage to gather a considerable number of Hu soldiers, but there are also quite a few who are privately resentful and refuse to obey him. Su Kui whispered. Ha! Wang Chong chuckled as he casually planted the small red banner in the wilderness next to Talas. He then turned his head to Su Kui. It's for Fomin Linta, right? Su Kui lowered his head, his voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz. He had investigated the Hu rebellion in great detail, and the crux of the problem lay with Wang Chong, or more accurately, with Fomin Linta. After operating in Qixi for so many years, Fomin Linta's prestige had soared like the noon sun, deeply rooted in the hearts of all the Hu soldiers. Gujulai's rebellion had been for this reason, and so had the unrest of the Hu soldiers. This was not something that a single Heba Yi could resolve. In truth, Su Kui had wanted to tell Wang Chong, but in the end, it was Wang Chong who had brought it up himself. Su Kui, you're taking this matter too seriously. It's just a few minor disturbances. They're not as capable as you think. In addition, I've already thought of a way to deal with those resentful Hu soldiers. Wang Chong indifferently said, his expression relaxed. Su Kui finally raised his head, a hint of surprise in his eyes. This problem had plagued him for a long time, but he had never been able to think of a way to resolve it. He couldn't kill those Hu, but he also couldn't not kill them. It was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. He had never imagined that Wang Chong would have a solution. Take this letter and send it to Biding Protector General in Sishun. I'm confident that he'll be happy to help us resolve this problem. As Wang Chong spoke, he took out a prepared letter from his bosom and handed it over to Su Kui's dumbstruck expression. My lord, Su Kui's eyes were dull, and his face was blank. He had no idea what Wang Chong's words meant. To have Biding Protector General in Sishun resolve this problem on their behalf and take over those resentful Hu generals was simply too far-fetched. Will Lord and Sishun really be willing? Su Kui had an uneasy look on his face. If he remembered correctly, there was a significant rift between the Biding Protector General and Wang Chong. In the capital, Wang Chong had even clashed with him. Moreover, when Wang Chong marched into Qixi, that person from Biding had also been a fierce opponent. It was beyond Su Kui's imagination that Wang Chong wanted him to help him at this time. You don't need to worry about this matter. No matter what grudges I had with the Biding Protector General in the past, he will definitely agree to this. Wang Chong indifferently said, his voice brimming with confidence. Yes, Marquis. Although he was utterly confused, Su Kui still acknowledged the order and left. Flap, flap, flap. Several days later, a black falcon carrying Wang Chong's personal letter flew over the steppe, following the border between the Western Turks and the Tang dynasty, all the way to the most illustrious center of power in the north of the Tang dynasty, the Baiding Protectorate. On the vast land, a huge black object stood. It was a war machine that was made up of countless sentry posts, barracks, towers, and a circle of walls that was 60 to 70 feet tall, as well as a huge metal palace. Thousands of black-armored soldiers of the Baiding Protectorate stood between these sentry posts, barracks, and towers. These people all had their backs ramrod straight as if they had taken root in the earth. They exuded powerful auras and warily observed their surroundings as if they were ready to enter the fray at any moment. In the entire Tang dynasty, the soldiers of the Baiding Protectorate were definitely the most vigilant, as they were constantly facing attacks from the Turkic armies that came from unknown directions. With a gust of wind, the black falcon flew through the gate and into a gloomy hall. In the hall, a middle-aged Hu of about 30 was seated on a throne. His features were strong and chiseled, and he wore a suit of heavy armor. He was currently holding a black-covered scroll and reading it with rapt attention. When the black falcon flew into the hall, the resolute Hu did not seem to notice it. His attention was completely absorbed by the scroll in his hand. Baiding was a land of war and frequent wars, and the Baiding Protectorate, as the center of these wars, should have been brimming with a somber and frigid aura. But the presence of this middle-aged Hu gave the Baiding Protectorate a thick and gentle scholarly aura, causing one to mistake this place for some residence in Jiangnan and forget that this was actually the bitter northern steppe. Clang! A cold light flashed through the gloomy hall as a stalwart figure strode forward, the sword at his waist unsheathed and the gleaming tip of the sword accurately catching the black falcon. The Baiding general with the scar on the left side of his face glanced at the falcon's feet, and his eyes widened, an indescribably strange expression on his face. After a moment's thought, the Baiding general lifted the black falcon with his sword and strode up to the middle-aged Hu diligently studying. He then respectfully bowed at the waist. "My lord, there is a letter. But your subordinate does not dare to open this letter." The scar-faced Baiding general lowered his head and stared at the tip of his feet. In all of the northern steppe, only Protector General and Sishun could inspire such respect from the bottom of his heart. "What, you don't dare to open it? As the Deputy Protector General of Baiding, is there any letter that you can't open?" And Sishun grinned, not even raising his head. The only thing left in his eyes was the scroll in his hand. "My lord, I truly do not dare to open it, because the seal of Qixi is on it." The scar-faced Baiding Deputy Protector General lowered his head as he spoke once more. "Oh." And Sishun just smiled and didn't care. He even flipped a page. But soon, and Sishun immediately felt something. His thick eyebrows gradually furrowed, and his gaze also left the scroll. He slowly raised his head. "Qixi." "Yes, it is Qixi," the scar-faced Baiding Deputy Protector General respectfully said, knowing that his subordinate had understood. In the last few months, the entire Tang dynasty had experienced a major earthquake, and the structure of power that had remained unchanged for decades had undergone a massive change. A prince had fallen, many ministers had fallen, and a protector general had been imprisoned. And the Holy Emperor's fury had caused all the protector generals and great generals to tremble in fear. If Qixi was still the Fomin Linta of the past, he wouldn't have needed to ask the Protector General's permission and could have directly dealt with it. This had been in Sichuan's order. But now, all the Protector Generals and great generals of the empire knew that Qixi had a new master. His rise had been as intense as a storm, and it had been accompanied by the fall of a veteran great general. The new Qixi Protector General was definitely on the special list of all the Protector Generals and great generals. As a new official, his every move would attract the attention of everyone. No one had expected that his first letter would be to the Baiding Protectorate. If he remembered correctly, he and the Protector General had not been good allies. "Let me see." And Sishun finally put down the black-covered scroll and extended his right hand, a hint of confusion in his eyes. He was also confused. There was no reason for this letter to have come at all. And Sishun took the falcon from the Deputy Protector General's hands and unwrapped the letter. With just a glance, his brow relaxed and he began to heartily laugh. Interesting, far too interesting. I didn't think that the first day this new noble of the Tang dynasty would be to beg me. Ah! The scar-faced biting deputy protector general trembled, clearly rather surprised. But Milord isn't joking, right? Whether it was in the past or his usual style, this new protector general was an extremely unyielding person. If he wasn't unyielding, Fomenlinta wouldn't have been pulled down from his high horse. Given this person's personality, he would never ask for help, and besides, his lord had a grudge against him. It was unheard of to ask for help from an old enemy. Haha, I won't keep you in suspense. Take it. And Sishun flicked his finger, sending Wang Chong's letter flying into the hands of the scar-faced biting deputy protector general. Glancing at the contents of the letter, the deputy protector general was dumbfounded. I didn't think that he would so quickly pacify the Qixi protectorate. He didn't even think about killing a person like Gujulai, and he even wants us to help him take in nearly 10,000 Hu soldiers of the Qixi protectorate. Begging is too much of an exaggeration. This person has no intention of begging at all. And Sishun indifferently said, flicking off his fingernails as he slowly stood up from his seat. He's just trying to negotiate with us, and it seems like he's certain that I'll agree. And Sishun smirked. This letter truly was very interesting. It could be said that he had never received a more interesting letter this year. A letter asking for help, but not the slightest attitude. Was there anything more interesting than this? This brat is a little too arrogant. What makes him think that we'll agree to his request? Moreover, he's been too arrogant recently. Milord, why don't I just refuse him and let him learn his lesson? The deputy protector general said rudely as he narrowed his eyes. The young marquis of the Qixi protectorate was not a very popular lord in biting, and he had been so blunt in his request that he had been refused. Refuse? A pensive look appeared in Sishuan's eyes, and then he smiled and shook his head. Why should I refuse? Milord, you want to agree to his request. The scar-faced deputy protector general stood in the hall, his entire body frozen in shock, a look of disbelief on his face. This answer was definitely not within his expectations. At this moment, even if Ishbara Khagan of the Western Turks appeared in front of him, he would not be as surprised. This brat is our enemy. Chapter 853. Is it very hard to understand? And Sishun grinned and walked down from his throne. His expression was relaxed, his bearing exuding the aura of a strategist and brimming with energy. There is no such thing as a pure enemy or a pure friend. Whether it was Fomenlinta of the past or the young marquis of the Tang dynasty, regardless of whether the tone in their letters is good or bad, if it's beneficial to us, we should naturally accept it. No matter how bad the tone, we don't care. If it's disadvantageous to us, we should naturally swiftly reject it. No matter how pleasant or tactful it is, we should still pretend that we didn't hear it. I've always underestimated that boy from Qixi. I always believed that he was just an ordinary man who only knew how to stir up trouble. This sort of person, no matter how dazzling or how quickly he rose, would never be able to enter the eyes of me or Geshu Han. I didn't think that he would so quickly comprehend the rules of the game of the great general level just a few days after taking the position of Qixi Protector General. I now admit that this boy truly does have the right to enter the elite game of the empire on the same level as me, Geshu Han, and Zhang Shogui. And Sishuan's gaze pierced through the hall into the distance, a thoughtful smile on his lips. On the side, the scar-faced Vice Protector General was dumbstruck, his entire body frozen in shock. The elite game of the Empire. In all his years of following Sishun, this was the first time he had learned of the secrets of the great general level. Don't think about it. Send a reply. Tell our new Qixi Protector General that the Biting Protectorate is short on manpower due to the frequent battles and truly does need reinforcements. Thus, I will be taking over his Hu soldiers. With these last words, Sishuan's eyes exploded with an unprecedented and intimidating light. Yes, milord. Several days later, in the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, Marquis, The Biding Protector General has sent a letter saying that he will take as many of the Hu soldiers as we wish to deal with, no matter how many there are. Su Kui excitedly rushed into Wang Chang's hall, the letter in his hands still in disbelief. An Imperial Protector General like An Sishun, one who had a grudge with his marquis, was actually willing to help. Really? Wang Chong sat high above him. He raised his head slightly, and there was no surprise in his eyes. Write a reply to An Sishun and say that you got it. In addition, tell him that the people the Qixi Protectorate doesn't want will be sent to him very soon. Wang Chang's tone was light and breezy, as if he had dealt with a trivial matter, or as if An Sishun had done what he should have done a long time ago. Su Kui was stunned. In the end, he couldn't help but admire him from the bottom of his heart. Perhaps only their own marquis could do such a thing. Wang Chong just smiled faintly and lowered his head again. He continued to read the letter that Yang Hongchang had sent from the western regions and said without raising his head, "You'll understand in the future. For now, let's talk to Heba Yi first." The great generals and protector generals of the empire were rarely swayed by their personal emotions. Everything was based on the interests and the overall situation. This was the basic requirement of a general. If one couldn't do this, one couldn't be considered a qualified great general. However, this was only for great generals and protector generals of the same level. Without reaching this level, one had no right to participate in this game. In his last life, Wang Chong had been the Grand Marshal of the world and was honored as the War Saint, so he naturally knew all of this. Yes, Su Kui only half understood and quickly left. Once Su Kui left, Wang Chong continued to read the letter in his hand. In the western regions, the Tang dynasty had always been short on soldiers because of the long distances. The soldiers of the western regions were far more elite than those of the other protectorates, so they had no other choice but to use a purely elite army. Just the soldiers of Qixi and Anxi were far from enough to resolve the future crisis. But the western regions had a unique advantage. It had a large number of soldiers that could be hired. As long as one had enough money, one could quickly gather a large number of soldiers. Wang Chang's letter was a request for Yang Hongchang's assistance in investigating the mercenary tribes of the western regions. Heba Yi and Su Kui were far more efficient than expected. That very night, the tens of thousands of soldiers of Qixi began to reorganize. Those who were willing to stay could remain in the Qixi Protectorate, and those who were unwilling to follow the Han could submit to Heba Yi's subordinates. And those who were unwilling to stay could go to the Biding Protectorate and submit to An Sishun. Although Heba Yi tried his best to stop this scene, he couldn't do anything about it. A melon that was forcefully picked would not be sweet. If they were unwilling to stay, then there was no point in forcing them to stay, and it would only lead to more unrest. Time slowly passed, and Wang Chang's change of blood in the Qixi Protectorate caused a massive upheaval in Qixi. This upheaval of leave or stay only began to subside at the Z period. Deep into the night, all was quiet. "We can't stay any longer," a low whisper could be heard in the darkness. It was not Hu, nor was it Chinese, but an even more complicated language. It was not even a common language in the western regions. This new Han Protector General is too formidable. With just a simple interrogation, our identities will be exposed. Another low whisper could be heard. At the edge of the Qixi Protectorate's barracks, beneath the high fences, several figures were creeping on the ground, slowly moving through the darkness. They moved in a different direction from all the Han soldiers, as well as the Hu soldiers who were deployed to Biding, because they were moving in the northwest direction. "Hurry! We won't be able to leave once the sun rises. We have to report this to the governor and have him raise his guard against this young Han Protector General. His cavalry is too powerful. In the future, they will definitely become a thorn in our side." I truly didn't think that there would be such a powerful army in the distant east. The governor will definitely treat this discovery with great importance. That as the few of them spoke softly, they swiftly used their scimitars to open up a passageway that could only allow one person to pass through, out of the line of sight of the sentries. The figures of these people shuttled, and with a strange posture, like swaying loaches, they drilled out of the passageway, sticking close to the ground. "All right, let's go." Once they were out of the barracks, the few of them heaved a sigh of relief. They immediately shrunk their bodies and dashed toward the northwest. However, before they could get far, a sudden change occurred. A loud shout suddenly came from the front, "Kill them all!" "Halt! Where are you going? There's a spy! Don't let them get away! Capture them! Pupu. With a flash of fire, a flurry of arrows streaked across the sky and landed not too far away from the few of them, following which, several torches were thrown over. In the dark night, one silhouette after another roared. Like wolves and tigers, they rushed out from various hidden places in the surroundings. Dee-da-da. The war horses neighed, the heavy hoofbeats were as dense as rain, as heavy as thunder, whistling as a flock of bees. In the blink of an eye, 30 to 50 Wushang cavalry had charged out, all of them holding up torches that illuminated the area as bright as day, as well as those deserters who were trying to sneak out of the camp under the cover of darkness. In the bright light of the torches, everyone could clearly see that these people had high noses, deep eyes, and prominent cheekbones. They looked very similar to the Hu, but they had deep green eyes that were completely different. Not just the Hu, but no one in the western regions had these eyes. The Arabs. Standing at the very front of the Wushang cavalry, Su Kui was struck dumb. Behind him, the Wushang cavalry had the same expression on their faces. There were only two kinds of people in the Qixi Protectorate, the Hu and the Han. They had received Wang Chang's order to patrol the perimeter and guard against scouts and spies from other factions. They had never imagined that they would catch a few Arabs who shouldn't even be here. And they were wearing the armor of the Qixi Protectorate. All was quiet in the light of the torches. The sight of the Wushang cavalry and the other Qixi soldiers instantly made the Arabs turn ghastly pale. What? At daybreak, in the main hall of the Qixi Protectorate, Wang Chong finally revealed a look of shock upon hearing Su Kui's report. Arab spies have been discovered in the Qixi Protectorate, and they're disguised as Hu soldiers. Replying to Marquis, this is indeed the case. I sent someone to investigate, and all of them are recorded as Hu in the roster of the Qixi Protectorate. And based on the chronology, they began more than 6 months ago. Su Kui bowed, his face serious. As he spoke, he waved a hand behind him. Bring them in. Bang! Bang! Su Kui had barely spoken when several heavily armored Wushang cavalry stepped over the threshold, each of them carrying a bound Arab soldier and throwing him to the ground. Wang Chong gazed at these bulky Arab soldiers, his eyes finally turning grave. Wang Chong had seen Arab merchants before. In his past, when he was stubborn and incompetent, Wang Chong had interacted with them many times. Those Arab merchants were just as many people remembered them to be: chubby, smiling, and adorned in gold and silver. Their fingers were covered in rings of agate and jade, making them look like clowns. But these Arabs were different. Their bodies were tall, well-proportioned, and sturdy, as if they had been cast from steel, brimming with explosive strength. Moreover, the thick calluses on their hands indicated their status. These were not traveling merchants, but regular soldiers of the Arab army. Wang Chong had never imagined that he would meet a true soldier of the Arab army in this sort of situation. The Arabian Empire had always been an extremely powerful foe in Wang Chong's mind. Once he finished reorganizing the Qixi Protectorate and taking care of everything, Wang Chong would point his sword at the Arabs. Even if they didn't come, Wang Chong would definitely go and find them. But Wang Chong had never imagined that they had already extended their claws into the Qixi Protectorate and had even disguised themselves as Hu to infiltrate the army. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.